Hey everyone, welcome to Yellowfen. Today I want to argue that the Simpson family is the most psychologically accurate depiction of a dysfunctional American family ever put on television, and nobody notices because they are too busy laughing. Think about it. Homer's drinking is not a joke. It is a man numbing himself because his mother vanished when he was a child, and his father told him she was dead. Marge's patience is not a virtue. It is a woman one bad day away from stopping her car on a bridge and refusing to move, which she did. Bart is not a bad kid. He is a boy who showed up to kindergarten excited to learn and was told by a school psychologist that his life was already over. He was 5. Lisa is not just the smart one. She is an 8-year-old carrying the weight of a family that cannot see what she sees. And Maggie, the baby who never speaks, might be absorbing more damage than any of them. Over the next few hours, we are going to sit with this family the way a psychologist would. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough. Let's begin. The Simpson family as America's mirror. Why a psychologist would even bother studying a cartoon. There is something strange about the fact that one of the most studied families in the history of psychology is not real. They are yellow. They have 4 fingers on each hand. They have been the same age since 1989. And yet, real psychologists, real therapists, and real professors at real universities have spent decades writing about them. The Simpson family. Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie have been the subject of academic books, college courses, peer-reviewed papers, and clinical case studies. And the question you might be asking yourself right now is why? Why would a trained psychologist care about a cartoon family from a fictional town called Springfield? The answer is actually simpler than you might think. The Simpsons are worth studying because they are us. Not in some deep, poetic way, in a very direct, almost uncomfortable way. When you strip away the yellow skin and the jokes and the fact that they have been on television for over 35 years, what you are left with is a family that looks almost exactly like what the average American family actually looks like. And that is not an accident. That is by design. Matt Groening created the Simpson family in 1987 while sitting in the lobby of producer James L. Brooks's office. He was supposed to pitch his comic strip, Life in Hell, but he realized that doing so would mean giving up the rights to his life's work. So instead, right there in the lobby, he sketched out a new family and named them after his own parents and sisters. His father was Homer. His mother was Margaret, which became Marge. His sisters were Lisa and Maggie. The only name he changed was his own, swapping Matt for Bart, which is an anagram of brat. The family first appeared as short animated clips on The Tracy Ullman Show on April 19, 1987. 2 years later, on December 17, 1989, they got their own show, and that show never stopped. It became the longest-running animated series in American history, the longest-running sitcom, and the longest-running scripted primetime show. Period. But what made the family stick was not just the comedy. It was the structure. When you break down who the Simpsons are, you are looking at a family that matches the most common setup in the United States. 2 married parents, 3 children. The oldest is a boy, which, according to a 1997 Gallup poll, is what most American couples said they would prefer if they could choose. The father works a middle-class job that he does not enjoy. The mother stays home and takes care of the household. They have pets, a dog named Santa's Little Helper and a cat named Snowball II. They live in a house they struggle to afford. They have extended family nearby, a grandfather in a retirement home, 2 aunts who do not like the father, and a grandmother who is mostly absent. They argue about money. They argue about the kids. They love each other even when they do not like each other. Dr. Misty K. Hook, a licensed psychologist who taught family psychology at Texas Woman's University, wrote about exactly this in her chapter for the book, The Psychology of the Simpsons, a real academic book published in 2006 by Ben Bella Books. The book was edited by Alan S. Brown, a professor of psychology at Southern Methodist University, and Chris Logan, a lecturer in the field. It featured 29 contributors, including psychologists, counselors, teachers, and school therapists. It covered everything from clinical psychology to gambling addiction to family therapy, all through the lens of the Simpson family. In her chapter, Dr. Hook pointed out that the Simpsons reflect a large portion of American families. They are a middle-class household with a traditional structure: 2 married adults, 3 children, and a mix of dogs and cats. Homer works at the Springfield nuclear power plant as a safety inspector, a position that provides a stable but unremarkable income. Marge is primarily a homemaker who occasionally tries other careers, but always returns to the home. They have gone through financial hardships, dealt with difficult in-laws, and questioned each other's choices more times than anyone could count. Dr. Hook concluded that the Simpson family mirrors so many of our flaws and our virtues, and that their similarity to our own family situations probably explains a lot of their popularity. And that is exactly what makes them so useful for a psychologist. The Simpsons are not special because they are perfect. They are useful because they are not. They fight. They make mistakes. Homer drinks too much. Marge bottles up her feelings. Bart acts out at school. Lisa feels alone, even when she is surrounded by people. Maggie is so quiet that sometimes the family forgets she is there. Grandpa Abe tells stories nobody listens to and lives in a retirement home his son rarely visits. These are not unusual problems. These are the problems that show up in therapy offices every single day. The Simpsons just happen to make them funny. The town they live in matters too. Springfield is designed to be a stand-in for America itself. Graney named it after Springfield, Oregon, but he also chose it because Springfield is one of the most common city names in the United States. He wanted every viewer to feel like the Simpsons could be living in their town. And Springfield delivers on that idea. It has a nuclear power plant, a church, a school, a bar, a police station, a hospital, and a mayor who is openly corrupt. It has rich people and poor people and everyone in between. It has good neighbors and bad neighbors, represented perfectly by the contrast between the Simpsons and the Flanders family next door. The Flanders are the ideal family, religious, kind, well-organized, and always smiling. The Simpsons are the real family, messy, loud, disorganized, and always one bad decision away from disaster. The show puts them side by side on purpose because the gap between who we think we should be and who we actually are is one of the most common things people talk about in therapy. The philosopher Slavoj Žižek once made the observation that the true spirit of our times is best captured not in movies, but in television series. If that is true, then The Simpsons might be the most honest mirror television has ever held up to the American family. It does not flatter us. It does not fix things neatly at the end of every episode. It just shows us a family that keeps going, keeps messing up, and keeps sitting down on that couch together at the end of the day. And for a psychologist, that is exactly what makes them worth a closer look. Because here's the thing that any family therapist will tell you. The families that look perfect from the outside are usually the ones hiding the most. The families that are loud and messy and obviously flawed, they are actually the ones that tend to survive. Not because their problems are small, but because their problems are visible. You cannot fix what you cannot see. And The Simpsons put everything on display. Homer's laziness is not hidden. Marge's frustration is not secret. Bart's behavior problems are the talk of the whole town. Lisa's sadness is something she literally plays through her saxophone for anyone who will listen. Nothing is swept under the rug. Everything is right there, out in the open, for the audience and for any psychologist who cares to pay attention. That is also what makes this video essay possible. We are not guessing at what is wrong with this family. The show tells us. Over 35 years and over 800 episodes, the writers have given us an incredibly detailed picture of how this family works, how it breaks, and how it puts itself back together. They have shown us Homer's childhood, They have shown us Marge's childhood. They have given us flashbacks to how Homer and Marge met, how they fell in love, how they struggled, and how they stayed together anyway. They have shown us Bart getting diagnosed with attention problems, Lisa falling into depression, and Grandpa Abe being abandoned by the son he never knew how to raise properly. All of it is on the record. All of it is in the episodes. And all of it lines up, in one way or another, with real patterns that real psychologists have studied for decades. The book, The Psychology of the Simpsons, was reviewed favorably across the board. The Simpsons Archive praised it for balancing humor and academic depth. One of the book's editors, Chris Logan, explained that the content is serious, but it is not presented in a way that feels like a textbook. The Times praised it alongside similar books about The Sopranos, saying both shows were sturdy enough to support real academic study. And that is the key word, sturdy. The Simpsons are not a shallow show dressed up as something deep. They are a deep show dressed up as something shallow, and a good psychologist can tell the difference. So this is what we are going to do. Over the course of this video, we are going to sit with this family the way a psychologist would. We are going to look at each member, Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, Maggie, and even Grandpa Abe, and we are going to talk about what a trained therapist would actually notice about them. We are going to talk about the patterns they repeat, the roles they play in the family, and the ways they hurt each other without meaning to. We are going to talk about how the problems in this family did not start with Homer. They started long before him, and they have been passed down from father to son for at least 4 generations. And we are going to talk about why, despite all of that, this family somehow stays together. None of this requires a psychology degree to understand. That is the beauty of using The Simpsons as a starting point. You already know these people. You have watched them argue at the dinner table and make up at the end of the episode. You have watched Homer do something stupid and Marge forgive him for it. You have watched Bart get in trouble and Lisa try to save the world, and Maggie quietly take everything in from the background. You know this family. What you might not know is what a psychologist would say is actually going on underneath all of it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And the best place to start is with the man sitting on the couch with a beer in one hand and a donut in the other. Because when a psychologist looks at Homer Simpson, they do not just see a lazy dad. They see something that goes much, much deeper than that. Section 2. Homer Simpson and the Pleasure Principle. A man who never learned to wait. If a psychologist were to sit across from Homer J. Simpson in an office and ask him one simple question, "What do you want right now?" the answer would come fast. A beer, a donut, a nap, whatever is closest, whatever feels good in this exact moment. That is Homer. That has always been Homer. And to a psychologist, that pattern is not just funny. It is one of the most revealing things about him. Homer Simpson is a man who lives almost entirely in the present. Not in the mindful, peaceful way that meditation teachers talk about. In the way where he cannot stop himself from doing what feels good right now, even when he knows it will cause problems later. He eats until he is sick. He drinks until he cannot drive straight. He avoids work whenever he can. He makes decisions based on whatever thought just entered his head, and then deals with the mess afterward. Or, more accurately, he lets his wife Marge deal with the mess afterward. This is who Homer is, and a psychologist would have a lot to say about why. The simplest way to explain Homer's mind is through an idea that a famous thinker named Sigmund Freud came up with a long time ago. Freud believed that every person's mind has different parts that are constantly fighting with each other. One of those parts he called the id. The ID is the part of you that only cares about one thing, feeling good. It does not care about rules. It does not care about other people's feelings. It does not think about tomorrow. It only asks one question. What do I want right now? And then it tries to get it. Freud called this the pleasure principle. It is the idea that human beings are wired to chase pleasure and avoid pain, and that some people never really learn to control that urge. Homer Simpson is the pleasure principle with a beer gut and a yellow head. Every single thing he does points back to this one pattern. He does not plan ahead. He does not consider consequences. He chases whatever feels good in the moment and then acts surprised when things go wrong. And the show does not hide this. It puts it right in front of you, episode after episode, for over 35 years. Take King Size Homer, which is Season 7, Episode 7. In this episode, Mr. Burns starts a morning exercise program at the power plant. Every employee is required to participate. Homer hates it. He does not want to exercise. He does not want to wake up early. He does not want to do anything that is uncomfortable. So instead of just doing the exercises like everyone else, Homer comes up with a plan. He finds out that if you weigh over 300 pounds, you qualify as disabled under the company's rules, and you can work from home. At the time, Homer weighs 239 pounds, so he decides to gain 61 pounds on purpose. Think about that for a second. A man who does not want to do 5 minutes of morning exercise decides that the easier path is to make himself dangerously overweight. That is the pleasure principle taken to an extreme. Homer is not thinking about his health. He is not thinking about what Marge will think. He is not even thinking about whether being 300 pounds will actually make his life better. He is only thinking about one thing. He does not want to be uncomfortable right now. And he will do whatever it takes to avoid that discomfort, even if it creates a much bigger problem down the road. And the episode shows exactly what happens. Homer gorges himself on food. He visits Dr. Nick Riviera, who tells him to eat as much fat as possible. Homer uses Pop-Tarts instead of bread for sandwiches. He brushes his teeth with milkshakes. Bart helps by handing him burger after burger. Homer balloons up to 300 pounds and gets his wish. He gets to work from home. But then reality sets in. He is too big to fit in a movie theater seat. Strangers make fun of him on the street. Marge tells him she no longer finds him attractive. His fingers are too fat to use the phone. The automated system actually tells him to mash the keypad with your palm and offers to send him a special dialing wand. And worst of all, while he is supposed to be monitoring a nuclear safety system from home, he is too lazy to pay attention and nearly causes a meltdown. It is only his enormous body accidentally plugging the leak that saves the town. A psychologist watching this episode would not just laugh. They would see a textbook case of a person who cannot tolerate short-term discomfort and will go to extreme lengths to avoid it, even when those lengths create far worse problems. This is something therapists see every day. People who cannot say no to another drink even though their marriage is falling apart. People who cannot stop spending money even though they are drowning in debt. People who eat to numb their feelings even though it is destroying their health. The specifics change, but the pattern is always the same. Do what feels good now, deal with the fallout later, or better yet, hope someone else deals with it for you. And that is exactly what Homer does, over and over again. According to Matt Groening himself, Homer held 188 different jobs in the first 400 episodes of the show. As the series has gone on, that number has grown to roughly 275. He has been a boxer, an astronaut, a food critic, a farmer, a snowplow driver, a bodyguard, a garbage commissioner, a beer smuggler, a monorail conductor, a missionary, and dozens more. He cycles through jobs the way some people cycle through diets. He gets excited about something new, throws himself into it with zero planning, and then either gets fired or loses interest and goes back to the power plant. A psychologist would look at that pattern and see someone who cannot commit to anything that does not give him immediate rewards. Homer's main job at the Springfield nuclear power plant is one he has held almost the entire run of the series. He works as a safety inspector in Sector 7G, but the show makes it very clear that he does not care about this job. He sleeps at his desk. He eats donuts instead of monitoring systems. His boss, Mr. Burns, frequently forgets he even exists. Homer does not work at the plant because he finds it meaningful. He works there because it pays the bills and requires almost nothing from him. It is the path of least resistance. And for someone driven by the pleasure principle, the path of least resistance is always the one they choose. Producer Mike Reiss, who worked on the show for years, once said that Homer was his favorite character to write because he has everything wrong with him, every comedy trope. He's fat and bald and stupid and lazy and angry and an alcoholic. Reiss added that he was pretty sure Homer embodies all 7 deadly sins. Writer John Swartzwelder, who wrote 60 episodes of The Simpsons, took it even further. He said he wrote Homer as if he were a big talking dog. He explained that one moment Homer is the saddest man in the world because he just lost his job or dropped his sandwich. The next moment he is the happiest man in the world because he found a penny. Swartzwelder said, "If you write him as a dog, you'll never go wrong." Reiss agreed with this, saying Homer is pure emotion, no long-term memory. Everything is instant gratification. That last phrase, everything is instant gratification, is about as close to a professional diagnosis as you can get from a comedy writer. Instant gratification is the core of the pleasure principle. It means choosing whatever feels good right now without thinking about what happens next. And Homer does this with everything: food, beer, sleep, television, even his relationships. When something feels good, he leans all the way in. When something feels bad, he runs the other way. There is almost no middle ground. But here is what makes Homer more than just a punchline. A psychologist would also notice something else about him, something that makes him different from a truly selfish person. Homer does love his family. That is not a question. The show proves it again and again. In And Maggie Makes 3, which is Season 6, Episode 13, we learn that Homer's dream job was working as a pin monkey at the Bowl-O-Rama bowling alley. He loved it. He was happy. He was appreciated, and he was making just enough money to support his family of 4. But then Marge got pregnant with Maggie, and Homer realized his bowling alley salary would not be enough for a 5th mouth to feed. So he went back to the nuclear power plant, the job he hates, and begged Mr. Burns to give him his old position back. Burns agreed, but posted a sign above Homer's workstation that read, "Don't forget, you're here forever." The episode ends by revealing that Homer covered most of the words with photos of Maggie, so that the sign now reads, "Do it for her." That moment is one of the most emotionally powerful scenes in the entire series. And a psychologist would find it very interesting because it shows that Homer is capable of delayed gratification, of choosing long-term responsibility over short-term happiness, but only when it comes to his children. He will not give up beer for his own health. He will not exercise for his own body. He will not save money for his own future. But he will give up his dream job for Maggie. He will go back to a place he hates every single day because his daughter needs him to. This is what makes Homer such a rich character for a psychologist to study. He is not a simple person, even though he acts like one. His inability to control his impulses is real and consistent and causes real damage to his family. But underneath all of that is a man who, when it truly matters, will put someone else before himself. He just cannot do it consistently. He cannot do it day to day. He can do it in big dramatic moments, quitting his dream job, saving the town by accident, choosing Marge over another woman. But he cannot do it in the small, quiet, everyday moments that actually hold a family together. And that gap between what Homer is capable of in his best moments and what he actually does in his regular life is one of the most psychologically honest things the show has ever portrayed. A psychologist might put it this way: Homer has the capacity for love, but not the skills to express it reliably. He feels deeply, but acts impulsively. He means well, but causes harm. And a lot of the reason for that goes back to how he was raised, because Homer did not grow up in a home where anyone taught him how to manage his feelings, how to be patient, or how to be a good father. His own father, Grandpa Abe Simpson, was cold, dismissive, and emotionally absent. And that story, the story of how the Simpson men break each other generation after generation, is something we will get into later in this video. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But before we talk about where Homer came from, we need to talk about what he turns to when the world gets hard. Because Homer's love of beer is not just a running joke. It is something a psychologist would take very, very seriously. Section 3. Homer's drinking. The problem everyone laughs at, but nobody fixes. There is a moment in Duffless, Season 4, Episode 16, where Homer Simpson is sitting in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and says, out loud, to a room full of people trying to get sober, "I would kill everyone in this room for a drop of sweet beer." He is not joking. At least, the character is not joking. The writers are, of course. That is how The Simpsons works. It wraps the most uncomfortable truths inside the funniest lines. But if a psychologist were watching that scene, they would not be laughing. They would be making notes. Homer Simpson's relationship with alcohol is one of the longest running threads in the entire series. It is there from the very beginning, and it never goes away. He drinks at home. He drinks at Moe's Tavern after work. He drinks at parties, at sporting events, at funerals, at weddings, and sometimes first thing in the morning. His favorite beer is Duff, and it is so tied to his identity that you cannot really picture Homer without a can of it in his hand. The show treats this mostly as comedy. Homer gets drunk, does something stupid, and everything resets by the next episode. But a psychologist would not see it that way. A psychologist would look at the full picture. The amount Homer drinks, how often he drinks, what happens when he tries to stop, and how his drinking affects his family. And they would see someone with a serious problem. Let us start with Duffless, because it is the episode where the show comes closest to actually saying what everyone already knows. The episode opens with Homer sneaking out of work early to go on a tour of the Duff Brewery with his best friend Barney Gumble. After the tour, Homer does the responsible thing and takes Barney's keys away because Barney is too drunk to drive. But then, as they are leaving the parking lot, Barney tells the police officers to give Homer a breathalyzer test out of revenge for not being allowed to drive. Homer fails the test. He is arrested, he loses his driver's license, and he is ordered by a judge to attend traffic school and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. This is already serious stuff for a cartoon that aired in 1993. Homer has been arrested. He has lost his license. He is in legal trouble because of how much he drinks. But the episode does not stop there. At his first AA meeting, Reverend Lovejoy tells the group that once they finish the program, they will never drink a beer again. Homer literally screams and runs out of the room. Later, Homer admits during another meeting that his desperation to drink got so bad that he snuck into a football stadium and ate the dirt underneath the bleachers, hoping there might be traces of spilled beer in it. Reverend Lovejoy kicks him out of the group for this. That night, Marge gives Homer a quiz from a magazine about his drinking habits. His answers confirm what everyone already suspects. Marge asks him to give up beer for 1 month. Homer reluctantly agrees, though the very first thing he does after saying yes is crack open a beer can. When Marge asks what that noise was, Homer says, "I was saying, psst, I love you." What follows is a month of Homer struggling with sobriety. And the show, to its credit, does not make it look easy. Homer is miserable. He discovers that watching baseball without beer is boring. He finds out that Tupperware parties are unbearable when you are sober. He is surrounded by temptation everywhere he goes. Billboards advertising Duff, beer commercials on television, his friends at Moe's waiting for him to come back. At one point, he sees Ralph Wiggum's science fair project, which is an alcohol-fueled miniature car, and he immediately imagines himself pumping beer into both the car and his own mouth at the same time. But something interesting happens during that month too. Homer loses weight. He saves over $100. He stops sweating while he eats. He is more alert, more present, more connected to his family. The physical and mental benefits of not drinking are right there, visible to Homer and to the audience. And a psychologist would point out that this is exactly what happens in real life when someone with a drinking problem takes a break. The body starts recovering almost immediately. The mind clears up, the wallet gets thicker, the relationships get calmer. It is not complicated. The hard part is not knowing what to do. The hard part is doing it. And that is where the episode gets honest, in a way that a lot of shows never do. After 30 days, Homer succeeds. He made it through the month. Marge is proud of him. But instead of celebrating with his wife, Homer heads straight to Moe's tavern. Marge tells him that just because the month is over does not mean he has to start drinking again right away. She wants to spend time with him. But Homer goes anyway. He sits down at the bar and Moe places a beer in front of him. Homer stares at it. Then he looks around the room, at Barney slumped over the bar, at the other regulars who have been sitting in that same spot for years, at what his life could look like if he keeps coming back here every night. And then he does something surprising. He leaves. He does not drink the beer. He goes home, and the episode ends with Homer and Marge riding a bicycle together into the sunset, singing "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head." It is one of the sweetest endings in the history of the show. But here is what a psychologist would also tell you. It did not last. By the next episode, Homer is drinking again. The status quo returns. The month of sobriety becomes a blip, not a turning point. And that, more than anything else in the episode, is the most realistic part. Because that is exactly how addiction works in real life. People quit for a while. They feel better. They see the benefits. And then they go back. Not because they are stupid. Not because they do not love their families, but because the pattern is so deeply built into their daily life that pulling it out feels like pulling out a part of themselves. The show has come back to this topic more than once. In Days of Wine and Dozes, Season 11, Episode 18, it is not Homer, but Barney Gumble who tries to get sober. Barney, who is Homer's oldest friend and the town drunk, makes a genuine effort to quit drinking. And for a while, it works. He becomes a different person, motivated, talented, capable. But eventually, just like Homer's month of sobriety, it fades. Barney goes back to drinking. The show keeps him sober for a few episodes and then quietly slides him back onto his usual bar stool. The writers of that episode were Dan Castellaneta, who voices Homer, and his wife, Deb LaCusta. They clearly understood the cycle they were writing about. A psychologist studying Homer's relationship with alcohol would also pay attention to Moe's Tavern and what it represents. Moe's is not just a bar. It is Homer's escape from everything that makes his life hard. His boring job, his financial stress, his responsibilities as a father, his complicated relationship with Marge. When Homer walks into Moe's, none of that exists. It is just him, his beer, and a handful of guys who are dealing with the same stuff he is. One writer who studied the show's treatment of alcohol, a man named Slukich, pointed out that one of the most common patterns in the series is Homer choosing his bar family over his real family. He goes to Moe's instead of coming home for dinner. He stays out instead of putting the kids to bed. He turns to Barney and Lenny and Carl for comfort instead of turning to Marge. And every time he does this, it puts another small crack in his marriage and another small distance between him and his children. Slukic also pointed out something else, that for kids who grow up watching The Simpsons, Homer's drinking gets normalized. It becomes just another funny thing Homer does, like eating too many donuts or falling asleep at work. But the show is smarter than that. Mixed in with the jokes are real consequences. Homer has been arrested. He has embarrassed his family in public. He is driven drunk with his children in the car. He has passed out at home. He has chosen beer over his wife's feelings more times than anyone can count. The show packages all of this as comedy, but the facts are still the facts. And then there is A Star Is Burns, Season 6, Episode 18, where Barney enters Springfield's film festival with a short film about his own drinking. The film is shot in black and white. It is emotional and raw and painfully honest. It ends with the line, "Don't cry for me, I'm already dead." The audience in the episode is moved to tears, and then Barney wins the grand prize, which is a lifetime supply of Duff beer. The joke writes itself. But underneath the joke is something a psychologist would recognize immediately. The system that created the problem is also the system that rewards the problem. Barney makes a film about how alcohol destroyed his life, and his prize for telling that truth is more alcohol. That is not just a Simpsons joke. That is how a lot of real people feel when they try to get help in a world that keeps pushing them back toward the thing that is hurting them. Dennis M. McCarthy, a psychology professor at the University of Missouri, wrote a chapter in the book The Psychology of the Simpsons specifically about the risk factors for alcoholism that the show depicts. He pointed out that Homer's drinking does not just affect Homer. It creates risk for his children. McCarthy noted that Bart shows what he called passive avoidance learning when it comes to alcohol, meaning he sees how his father uses drinking to avoid stress and may learn to do the same thing. Even more surprising, McCarthy flagged Maggie, the baby, as being at high risk for future substance problems due to what he described as violent tendencies. The idea that a baby on a cartoon could be analyzed for future addiction risk might sound extreme, but it shows how seriously psychologists take the environment a child grows up in. If your father drinks every day and your family treats it as normal, you are learning something, whether you know it or not. And that might be the most important thing a psychologist would say about Homer's drinking. It is not just about Homer. It is about what his drinking teaches the people around him. Bart watches his father avoid problems by going to Moe's. Lisa watches her mother quietly accept it. Maggie grows up in a house where a beer can on the coffee table is as normal as a glass of water. The drinking does not happen in a vacuum. It sends a message to every person in that family. And those messages, the ones that are never spoken out loud, are often the ones that do the most damage. Homer's drinking is one of the clearest examples of a pattern that runs through the entire Simpson family. Problems exist. Everyone can see them, but nobody actually fixes them. They manage, they cope, they get through the episode, and then the next week, everything is back to where it started. That cycle of coping without changing is something a psychologist would recognize instantly, and it shows up not just in Homer's drinking, but in the way every member of this family handles their pain. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And nobody handles their pain more quietly, more constantly, and more invisibly than the woman who holds this whole family together, Marge Simpson. Because while Homer is the one causing most of the chaos, Marge is the one absorbing all of it. And a psychologist would have just as much to say about what that does to a person. Section 4. Marge Simpson, the woman who holds everything together by falling apart. There is a scene in Homer Alone, Season 3, Episode 15, that every overworked mother in America would recognize. Marge Simpson is driving. She has to drop Bart and Lisa off at school. She has to get Homer's bowling ball serviced. She has a car full of groceries. The kids are fighting in the back seat. The radio is not helping. And then Maggie, sitting behind her, spills her bottle of milk. That is the moment Marge breaks. She does not yell. She does not pull over calmly and take a deep breath. She stops her car in the middle of the Springfield Memorial Bridge, puts it in park, grips the steering wheel, and refuses to move. Traffic piles up behind her. News helicopters show up. Chief Wiggum arrives. Kent Brockman tries to interview her from a harness dangling off a helicopter and slams into the bridge. The whole town is watching. And Marge just sits there. She is not moving for anybody. This is what a psychologist would call a breakdown. Not the dramatic kind you see in horror movies, the quiet kind. The kind that happens to someone who has been doing too much for too long for too many people without anyone ever asking if she is okay. Marge Simpson did not snap because of the spilled milk. She snapped because the spilled milk was the last small thing added to a pile of thousands of small things that nobody else in her family ever noticed or helped with. The writer of that episode, David M. Stern, said he came up with the idea because he noticed that most of the show's writers were pitching stories about Bart and Homer, and he thought there was a deeper kind of comedy in watching Marge fall apart. He was right. But the reason it works is not just because it is funny. It works because it is true. Marge is the person in the Simpson family who does everything. She cooks, she cleans, she does the laundry, she makes lunches, she drives the kids to school. She pays the bills. She manages the house. She remembers the appointments. She soothes the fights. She picks up after Homer. She worries about Bart. She listens to Lisa. She feeds Maggie. She does all of this every single day, and nobody thanks her for it because everyone in that house assumes it just happens on its own. A psychologist looking at Marge would see something very specific. They would see a person who has built her entire life around taking care of other people, to the point where she has almost no life of her own. She gave up her own goals. She gave up her own dreams. She pours everything she has into keeping this family running, and in return, she gets taken for granted. That pattern, where one person sacrifices everything to keep a troubled family together, is something psychologists see all the time in families where one member has a serious problem, like alcohol dependence. The person who holds everything together while the problem person keeps falling apart is sometimes called the enabler or the caretaker, and Marge fits that description almost perfectly. Think about what Marge's daily life actually looks like. Her husband drinks almost every night. He goes to Moe's Tavern instead of coming home for dinner. He falls asleep on the couch. He forgets important dates. He makes bad decisions that cost the family money. He has been arrested. He has put the children in danger. And every single time, Marge is the one who cleans up the mess. She does not leave. She does not demand that Homer get help. She does not set firm limits and stick to them. Instead, she adjusts. She absorbs the damage. She makes it work. And the next day, she does it all again. In Homer Alone, after her breakdown on the bridge, Marge is arrested. Mayor Quimby has her released because he does not want to lose the women's vote. And then what happens? Marge goes home. She tells Homer she needs a vacation. She goes to a spa called Rancho Relaxo for a few days by herself. And while she is gone, the entire family falls apart. Homer cannot take care of Maggie by himself. He invites Barney over to help, and the next morning, Maggie has wandered out of the house and gone missing. Homer has to call the Department of Missing Babies. Meanwhile, Bart and Lisa are miserable at Patty and Selma's apartment, eating tongue sandwiches and watching Divorce Court. The message of the episode is clear. Without Marge, this family cannot function for a single week. But here's what a psychologist would also point out. That is not a compliment. That is a warning sign. When a family depends completely on one person to hold everything together, and that person gets no help, no rest, and no recognition, that person is going to break down eventually. Marge did break down. She stopped her car on a bridge and refused to move. The whole town had to stop because one woman finally could not carry it all anymore. And the saddest part is what happened after. She went on her vacation. She came back. Homer and the kids promised to help more around the house. And then, by the very next episode, everything was back to exactly how it was before. This is what a psychologist would call the caretaker trap. The caretaker does everything. The family gets used to it. The caretaker burns out. The family panics. The caretaker recovers. The family promises to change. Nothing actually changes. And the cycle starts over. Marge has been stuck in this cycle for over 30 years of the show, and the writers know it. They keep writing episodes about it because it keeps being true. Take Scenes from the Class Struggle in Springfield, Season 7, Episode 14. Marge buys a Chanel suit at a discount store for $90, marked down from $2,800. It is the nicest thing she has ever owned. When she runs into an old high school classmate named Evelyn, she gets invited to the Springfield Country Club. For the first time in years, Marge has something that is just for her. She is excited. She feels beautiful. She feels seen. But then the old pattern kicks in. Marge starts changing herself to fit in with the wealthy women at the club. She alters the suit over and over to make it look different each time she visits. She becomes critical of her own family. She snaps at the kids. She tells Homer his behavior is embarrassing. She starts losing herself in the effort to be accepted by people who look down on her. And when the suit finally gets destroyed on her sewing machine because Lisa kept asking her questions while she was working and she lost focus, Marge sits there and says quietly, "At times like this, I guess all you can do is laugh." And the laugh does not come. That moment is one of the saddest in the entire series, because what you are watching is a woman who wanted one small thing for herself, and even that was too much. The family needed her attention. The suit was ruined. The dream was over. Marge ends up buying a real Chanel dress for $3,300, takes the family to the country club for the initiation party, and then stops in the parking lot. She realizes she has been changing into someone she is not. She looks at Homer and the kids and tells them their good points. Homer's honesty, Lisa's way of speaking her mind, even Bart's heart underneath his trouble. And then they skip the party and go to Krusty Burger instead. It is a sweet ending, but a psychologist would notice the pattern again. Marge tried to do something for herself. It caused tension in the family. She gave it up. She went back to her role. She made everyone else feel better. She got nothing. This same thing happens in Fear of Flying, Season 6, Episode 11. The family wins free airline tickets, but on the plane, Marge has a severe panic attack. She is terrified. She cannot fly. Instead of being supportive, Homer's first reaction is to ignore the problem. When Lisa suggests that Marge see a therapist, Homer is against it. His exact worry is that any therapist will figure out that he is the problem in Marge's life and convince Marge to leave him. Marge eventually sees Dr. Zweig, a therapist voiced by Anne Bancroft. Together they uncover the root of Marge's fear, a childhood memory of discovering that her father, who told her he was a pilot, was actually a flight attendant. The shame she felt as a little girl had been buried for decades. Dr. Zweig helps her work through it. But then, right when Dr. Zweig starts to dig into Marge's relationship with Homer, the part that might actually help Marge the most, Homer bursts in and declares that therapy is over. Marge stops going. Dr. Zweig insists that Marge should continue. She tells Marge there is more to talk about. But Marge walks away. She walks back to her family, back to her role, back to the life where she does everything for everyone and nobody does anything for her. And the show treats this as a happy ending. Marge can fly again. Problem solved. Except a psychologist would say the real problem, the one Dr. Zweig was just getting to, was never addressed at all. That is one of the most important things about Marge from a psychological point of view. She gets close to helping herself. She gets close to asking for what she needs. She gets close to setting boundaries. And then she pulls back every time. Because the family needs her. Because Homer cannot manage without her. Because the kids are fighting. Because there is dinner to cook and laundry to fold and a house to clean. Marge puts herself last so consistently that it has become invisible. Nobody in the family even sees it anymore. It is just how things are. Dr. Wynd Goodfriend, a psychology professor at Buena Vista University, wrote about the Simpson marriage in the book The Psychology of the Simpsons. She pointed out that Marge consistently pushes her feelings down and avoids confrontation. When Homer is kidnapped in one episode and replaced by a fake who acts nothing like him, Marge notices something is wrong but goes along with it anyway, saying, "Well, I sure don't feel like cooking." That is not just a joke. That is a picture of a woman who has learned that questioning things, pushing back, or demanding more will only make her life harder. So she accepts what she gets and keeps going. A psychologist would also look at Marge's physical signs of stress. Throughout the series, Marge has pulled out her own hair, had panic attacks, suffered from insomnia, had the breakdown on the bridge, and displayed signs of deep worry that never fully go away. Her famous tall blue hair, which she maintains carefully every day, is one of the few things about Marge that is just hers. Everything else belongs to someone else. Her time belongs to Homer. Her energy belongs to the kids. Her patience belongs to whatever crisis is happening that week. She has nothing left over. And yet Marge stays. She stays through Homer's drinking. She stays through his job losses. She stays through his schemes, his arrests, his thoughtlessness, his inability to remember anniversaries or help with the dishes. She stays because she loves him, yes. But a psychologist would also say she stays because she does not know who she is without the role of caretaker. Being needed is the only identity Marge has. Without the family that depends on her, she would have to face the question of what she actually wants for herself. And that question, for Marge, might be the scariest thing of all. The thing about a caretaker is that they make the family look better than it actually is. As long as Marge is absorbing all the stress, managing all the problems, and smoothing over all the damage, the Simpsons can keep pretending they are a normal family. But the cracks are there, and the person those cracks affect the most, after Marge herself, is the child who acts out. The one who breaks rules, talks back, and causes trouble everywhere he goes. The one the whole family has agreed is the problem. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Because if you ask a psychologist who the most misunderstood person in the Simpson family is, they might not say Homer or Marge. They might point to the 10-year-old boy in the orange shirt who everyone has already given up on, Bart Simpson. Section 5. Bart Simpson, the kid everyone gave up on before he had a chance. Here is something most people forget about Bart Simpson. On his very first day of kindergarten, he was excited. In Lisa's Sax, Season 9, Episode 3, there is a flashback to 1990, and in it we see a 5-year-old Bart Simpson bouncing with energy, heading off to school for the first time, shouting, "School will be fun!" He was not a troublemaker yet. He was not the class clown. He was not the kid who wrote "I will not" 100 times on the chalkboard every morning. He was just a little boy who was excited to learn. And then his kindergarten teacher crushed him. She was cold, she was mean, and she singled Bart out. When Bart could not recite the alphabet as quickly as the other kids, she did not help him. She mocked him. She told him he would be seeing a lot of F's in his future. She made him feel stupid on his very first day in a classroom. And according to the show, that is the moment everything changed. That is when Bart stopped trying to fit in at school and started trying to stand out in the only way he could, by being funny, by being loud, and by being bad. A psychologist watching that scene would recognize it immediately. What happened to Bart on that first day of school is what happens to a lot of kids who end up labeled as problem children. They walk in wanting to do well. They hit a wall. A teacher who does not understand them, a classroom that does not fit them, a system that punishes them for being different. And instead of getting help, they get shame. Once a child decides that they cannot succeed by being good, they often find another way to get noticed. They become the clown. They become the rebel. They become the scapegoat. And once that role sticks, it is almost impossible to shake. That is exactly what happened to Bart. After that terrible first day, he made Milhouse Van Houten laugh by making a rude noise. The other kids laughed too. For the first time that day, Bart got positive attention, not for being smart, but for being funny. And just like that, the path was set. He embarrassed Principal Skinner in front of the whole kindergarten class, and everyone loved it. Bart discovered that if he could not be the best student in the room, he could be the funniest kid in the room, and that has been his strategy ever since. But a psychologist would look deeper than just, Bart is a troublemaker. They would look at the pattern of his behavior across hundreds of episodes and ask a more specific question. What is actually going on with this kid? The answer, according to both the show itself and multiple psychology professors who have studied the character, is that Bart shows strong signs of attention problems. In Brother's Little Helper, Season 11, Episode 2, the show addresses this directly. After Bart floods the school gymnasium during Fire Safety Day by turning the fire hoses on full blast and surfing on a basketball hoop through the tidal wave, Principal Skinner has had enough. He calls Homer and Marge to the school and tells them that Bart has attention deficit disorder. He recommends that Bart be put on a behavior drug called Focusin, which is the show's version of the real-life medicine Ritalin. Now, the show plays this mostly for comedy. Skinner is not a doctor. He is a school principal who has been dealing with Bart's behavior for years and has finally snapped. The diagnosis is quick, it is not done by a professional, and Skinner basically threatens to expel Bart if Homer and Marge do not agree to the medication. A psychologist would have serious problems with how this was handled. You do not diagnose a child with attention problems in a 5-minute meeting with a school principal. It takes time, observation, testing, and someone who is actually trained to make that call. The show knows this. The episode is making fun of a real problem in America, the tendency to slap a quick label on difficult kids and hand them a pill instead of actually figuring out what is going on. But here is the interesting part. Even though the diagnosis was done badly in the show, the symptoms Bart displays across the entire series actually do line up with what a real psychologist would look for. Psychology professors at Lumen Learning and LibreTexts have both published case studies using Bart Simpson as an example. They point out that Bart consistently shows problems with paying attention, staying focused, and following through on tasks. He does not pay close attention to details. He has trouble keeping his mind on schoolwork. He is easily distracted. He loses things. He avoids tasks that require long periods of focus. He fidgets. He acts before he thinks. These are all things that a psychologist would look for when trying to figure out if a child has attention difficulties. In Bart Gets an F, Season 2, Episode 1, we see this in painful detail. Bart has been failing his history class. He has failed 4 tests in a row. The school psychologist, Dr. J. Lauren Pryor, meets with Homer and Marge and recommends that Bart repeat the 4th grade. Bart promises he will try harder, and to his credit, he actually does. He studies. He stays up late. He asks Martin Prince, the smartest kid in class, for help. He skips playing in the snow when a surprise blizzard closes school, staying inside to study instead. He genuinely, honestly tries. And he still fails. He gets a 59, 1 point short of passing. When Mrs. Krabappel hands in the test, Bart breaks down crying. He says, "This is as good as I can do, and I still failed." That line is one of the most heartbreaking in the entire series because it is not a joke. It is a 10-year-old boy who tried his absolute best and still was not good enough. A psychologist watching that moment would not see a bad kid. They would see a kid whose brain works differently from the way school expects it to, and a system that has no idea how to help him. Bart does end up passing. Barely. While crying, he accidentally makes a connection between his failure and George Washington's surrender of Fort Necessity to the French in 1754. Mrs. Krabappel is impressed that he used real historical knowledge in a natural way, and she gives him 1 extra point, bringing his grade up to a D-. Bart is overjoyed. He runs home yelling about his success. Homer and Marge put the test on the refrigerator, and Bart says, proudly, "Part of this D- belongs to God." But think about what that episode really shows. The best day of Bart's academic life, the day his parents were proudest of him for school, was the day he got a D-. That is how low the bar has been set for this kid. Everyone expects so little from him that barely passing is treated like a miracle. And a psychologist would say that is one of the most damaging things you can do to a child. Tell them over and over in big ways and small ways that nobody expects them to succeed. The psychology case studies also point out something else about Bart that often gets overlooked. He does not just show signs of attention problems, he also shows signs of what is called oppositional behavior, a pattern of arguing with adults, refusing to follow rules, deliberately annoying people, and breaking rules on purpose. He talks back to his teachers. He pranks Principal Skinner constantly. He defies Homer. He breaks things. He lies. He has been caught shoplifting. He has vandalized property. These are not just the actions of a class clown. They are the actions of a kid who has been in conflict with authority for so long that fighting back has become his default way of dealing with the world. But the same case studies make an important note. Bart does not show the kind of deep anger or cruelty that you would expect if his problems were truly severe. He is not violent in a scary way. He does not hurt animals. He does not bully weaker kids without reason. In fact, Bart often shows genuine kindness when it matters most. He has stood up for Lisa when she needed him. He has protected Milhouse. He risked his own safety to expose Sideshow Bob. Twice. Underneath all the trouble, there is a kid with a good heart who has never been given the right kind of help. And that is where the family part comes in. Because Bart's problems do not exist in a vacuum. They exist inside the Simpson household, where his father drinks almost every night, where his mother is overwhelmed and running on fumes, and where the adults around him have been telling him he has a problem since he was 5 years old. Homer's go-to response to Bart's behavior is to grab him by the neck and strangle him, a running gag on the show that a psychologist would take very seriously. It is played for laughs, but it sends a clear message. When you mess up, the person who is supposed to protect you responds with physical force. That teaches a child that conflict is solved with aggression, not with conversation. And it teaches them that love and punishment come from the same person, which makes it very hard to trust anyone. Homer has also told Bart at various points across the series that he is stupid, that he is a disappointment, and that he is the reason Homer's life is difficult. In Lisa's Sacks, when the school psychologist tells Homer and Marge that they need to focus on nurturing Lisa's abilities, Homer essentially gives up on Bart. The psychologist says about 5-year-old Bart, he's 5. His life is over. And Homer does not push back. He does not say, "Wait, what about my son?" He accepts it and moves on to Lisa. Bart's own father heard a professional say his son was a lost cause, and he just nodded. A psychologist studying Bart would also look at his role within the family system. In families where there is a lot of problems going on, drinking, stress, money trouble, unresolved conflict, each family member tends to fall into a specific role. One common role is the scapegoat. The scapegoat is the person who acts out, who causes visible trouble, who draws all the negative attention. And by doing this, the scapegoat actually serves a purpose. They distract everyone from the deeper problems that nobody wants to talk about. As long as everyone is focused on Bart's bad behavior, nobody has to deal with Homer's drinking, or Marge's exhaustion, or the fact that this family has never once gone to real counseling. Bart is the perfect scapegoat. He is loud, he is visible, he gives everyone something to point at and say, "That is the problem." But he is not the problem. He is the symptom. He is the alarm going off in a house where the smoke has been building for years. And instead of finding the fire, everyone just keeps yelling at the alarm. The Lumen Learning case study makes one more observation that is worth mentioning. It notes that Bart's relationship with his father is, in their words, volatile and dysfunctional. One minute Homer is scolding Bart harshly, and the next minute they are bonding over a prank. There is no consistency. Bart never knows which version of his father he is going to get, the one who loves him or the one who is angry at him. That kind of unpredictable parenting makes it almost impossible for a child to feel secure. And when a child does not feel secure at home, they often act out at school, because school is the one place where their behavior can get a reliable response, even if that response is punishment. That is the tragedy of Bart Simpson. He is not a bad kid. He is a kid who needed help from the very beginning and never got it. He needed a teacher who understood him. He needed a father who was consistent. He needed someone to look past the behavior and see the pain underneath. Instead, he got detention, chalkboard punishments, strangling, and a town that decided he was a lost cause before he turned 6. And yet Bart keeps going. He keeps showing up. He keeps being funny, even when it gets him in trouble. He keeps loving his family, even when they fail him. There is something incredibly strong about that. But a psychologist would tell you that strength should not have to come from a 10-year-old who has been written off by every adult in his life. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Bart is the kid everyone blames, but there is another Simpson child, one who gets almost no blame, almost no trouble, and almost no attention, who might actually be carrying the heaviest weight of all. Because being the smartest person in the room is not always a gift. Sometimes it is a burden that no 8-year-old should have to carry alone. Section 6. Lisa Simpson, the smartest person in the room and the loneliest kid in Springfield. Lisa Simpson has an IQ of 159. She is 8 years old. She plays the baritone saxophone. She is a vegetarian, a Buddhist, an environmentalist, and a member of the Springfield chapter of Mensa. She has solved crimes, won essay contests, challenged corrupt politicians, and understood concepts that most adults in her town cannot even spell. By every measure that schools and society use to judge a child, Lisa Simpson is a success story. She is what every parent says they want their kid to be: smart, driven, talented, and thoughtful. And she is miserable. A psychologist would not be surprised by this, because one of the things that research on very smart children has shown over and over again is that being gifted does not protect a child from sadness. In fact, it can make sadness worse. Kids who think more deeply than the people around them often feel more deeply too. They see problems that other kids do not see. They worry about things that other kids do not worry about. They ask questions that nobody around them can answer. And worst of all, they often feel completely alone because the gap between how they experience the world and how everyone around them experiences it can feel like a wall that nobody else even knows exists. The very first episode of The Simpsons to focus on Lisa, Moaning Lisa, Season 1, Episode 6, is about exactly this. The episode was written by Al Jean and Mike Reiss, and the idea came from producer James L. Brooks, who wanted an episode where Lisa is sad but does not know why. That is the key detail. Lisa is not sad because something bad happened. She is not sad because she got a bad grade or because someone was mean to her. She is sad because she woke up one morning and everything just felt pointless. She goes to school and cannot bring herself to play dodgeball because she is too sad. The gym teacher mocks her. She goes to band practice and tries to play something real on her saxophone. Something that comes from what she is actually feeling. And her music teacher, Mr. Largo, shuts her down. He does not want feeling. He wants her to play the notes on the page, nothing more. At home, Homer yells at her for playing her saxophone too loudly. Nobody in Lisa's life is giving her space to feel what she is feeling. A psychologist would recognize what is happening to Lisa in that episode. She is experiencing something that is very common in gifted children, a kind of deep, heavy sadness that does not have one specific cause. It is not about a single event. It is about the weight of being someone who sees too much, feels too much, and has nowhere to put it all. When you are 8 years old and you already understand that the world has serious problems, poverty, pollution, injustice, cruelty, and the adults around you either do not notice or do not care, that understanding does not feel like a gift. It feels like a curse. The only person who reaches Lisa in that episode is Bleeding Gums Murphy, a jazz musician she finds playing saxophone alone on a bridge late at night. Murphy does not try to cheer her up. He does not tell her to smile. He does not tell her that things are not that bad. Instead, he teaches her the blues. He shows her that there is a way to take the sadness inside you and turn it into something real. Music that other people can hear and feel. It does not fix the sadness. As Murphy tells her, the blues ain't about feeling better. It's about making other people feel worse. But it gives Lisa something she desperately needed. Proof that her feelings are valid and that there is at least one person in the world who understands them. But there is another scene in that episode that a psychologist would focus on even more. When Marge notices that Lisa is struggling, she does not take her to a professional. She does not sit down and ask Lisa what is really wrong. Instead, Marge gives Lisa the same advice her own mother gave her when she was a sad little girl. Smile. Pretend you are happy. Put on a good face and eventually the happiness will come. Marge tells Lisa that if she smiles, she will fit in. Boys will like her. She will get invited to parties and everything will be fine. Lisa tries it. She goes to school with a fake smile plastered on her face. And immediately kids start taking advantage of her. One boy tells her she is okay now and invites her to his house to do his homework. Lisa agrees, still smiling. Marge watches from the car and realizes what she has done. She has taught her daughter to hide her real self just to be accepted. She has passed down the exact same lesson her own mother taught her, the lesson that turned Marge into the woman who suppresses everything. And Marge, to her credit, stops it right there. She pulls Lisa aside and takes it all back. She tells Lisa to be herself, to feel whatever she feels, and that her family will always be there for her. From now on, Marge says, let me do the smiling for both of us. It is one of the most beautiful moments in the entire series. But a psychologist would point out that while Marge said the right thing in that moment, the rest of the show tells a different story. Because the truth is, nobody in the Simpson family knows what to do with Lisa. Homer loves her but does not understand her. Marge supports her but cannot keep up with her. Bart resents her intelligence at times and is jealous of the praise she gets from teachers. And Springfield as a town has no use for a child who cares about literature, science, politics, and ethics. Lisa is surrounded by people, and she is alone. This is what psychologists who study gifted children call alienation. It is the feeling of being fundamentally different from the people around you, not because you think you are better than them, but because you experience the world in a way they do not share. Lisa feels this alienation constantly. She has almost no friends her own age. Her closest companion for much of the series is her saxophone. The one true friend she found, Bleeding Gums Murphy, dies in Round Springfield, Season 6, Episode 22, leaving her even more isolated than before. In They Saved Lisa's Brain, Season 10, Episode 22, Lisa finally finds a group of people who think the way she does. She writes a letter to the Springfield newspaper criticizing the town's lack of culture, and the letter catches the attention of the local Mensa chapter. She is invited to join. For the first time in her life, Lisa is in a room full of people who value intelligence, who read books, who care about ideas. She is thrilled. But even that does not work out. When the Mensa group takes over Springfield after the mayor flees town, they immediately start fighting among themselves about whose ideas are best. They ban sports. They try to change the metric system. They argue about breeding programs. The smartest people in Springfield turn out to be just as petty and power-hungry as everyone else. Lisa is heartbroken. She says to Stephen Hawking, who shows up at the end of the episode, "We had such a beautiful dream. What went wrong?" And Hawking tells her, "Don't feel bad, Lisa. Sometimes the smartest of us can be the most childish." A psychologist would use that moment to explain something important about gifted children. Being smart does not mean you are emotionally mature. Being smart does not mean you know how to handle disappointment or conflict or the gap between how the world should be and how it actually is. In fact, very smart children often struggle more with these things because they can see the gap so clearly. They know exactly how things should work. They can imagine the perfect solution. And then they watch the world refuse to cooperate. And that gap between the ideal and the real becomes a source of constant frustration and sadness. Lisa also shows strong signs of something psychologists call perfectionism. Not the casual kind where someone likes things to be neat. The deep kind where a person ties their entire sense of self-worth to whether they are achieving at the highest possible level. In The PTA Disbands, Season 6, Episode 21, a teacher's strike shuts down Springfield Elementary. Every other kid in town is thrilled. No school means freedom. But Lisa has the opposite reaction. Without school, without tests, without grades, without teachers telling her she is doing well, Lisa falls apart. She suffers something like withdrawal. She actually begs Marge to grade her on anything. She needs the feedback. She needs the validation. Without it, she does not know who she is. That is a hallmark of perfectionism in gifted children. When your whole identity is built around being the smart one, what happens when there is nothing to be smart at? When there is no test to ace, no teacher to impress, no competition to win? A psychologist would say that Lisa has not developed a sense of self that exists outside of her achievements. She is not Lisa who happens to be smart. She is smart Lisa, and if you take the smart part away, she does not know what is left. This connects to another pattern a psychologist would notice. Lisa's constant need to be right, and her difficulty handling it when she is wrong or when her efforts are not appreciated. Throughout the series, Lisa has disrupted family events to make political points, alienated friends with her strong opinions, and clashed with authority figures who do not share her values. In Lisa the Vegetarian, Season 7, Episode 5, her commitment to her beliefs leads her to ruin Homer's barbecue by launching the roasted pig off a hill on a riding mower. She is standing up for what she believes in, and she is right that animals deserve better treatment. But the way she goes about it, forcing her beliefs on everyone else, destroying something her family was enjoying, shows a pattern. Lisa sometimes confuses being right with being kind. And when people push back, she feels even more alone. A psychologist looking at the full picture of Lisa's life would see a child who is carrying an enormous amount of weight. She carries the weight of her own intelligence in a town that does not value it. She carries the weight of her family's problems. She sees Homer's drinking. She sees Marge's sadness. She sees Bart struggling. And she understands all of it more clearly than anyone else in the house. She carries the weight of the world's problems because she reads the news. She follows politics. She understands climate change and injustice and inequality at an age when most kids are worried about recess. And she carries all of this weight with almost no one to share it with. The tragedy of Lisa Simpson is not that she is sad. It is that her sadness makes perfect sense. She is a deeply feeling, deeply thinking child who lives in a family and a town that are not equipped to meet her where she is. The adults around her either cannot understand her or do not have the energy to try. The kids around her either mock her or ignore her, and the one outlet she has, her saxophone, is something she discovered not through joy but through pain. In Lisa's Sax, Season 9, Episode 3, we learn that Homer bought Lisa her first saxophone only after the school psychologist identified her as gifted and said her abilities needed to be nurtured. Homer had been saving that money for an air conditioner during a brutal heat wave. He gave up his own comfort so his daughter could have an instrument. And the inscription he tried to put on it read, "Never forget that your daddy loves," before he dropped it and said, "Doh," which got engraved along with everything else. That saxophone became Lisa's voice. It became the way she talks to the world when the world will not listen. And a psychologist would say that while it is a beautiful thing that Lisa has music, it is also deeply sad that an 8-year-old needs a voice because nobody around her is hearing her real one. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Lisa's intelligence saved her from becoming lost, but it also separated her from the people she loves most. And the youngest member of the Simpson family, the one who cannot speak at all, has a different problem entirely. Because while Lisa uses her mind to cope with a chaotic family, the baby on the floor with the pacifier in her mouth has been watching everything from the very beginning, silently taking it all in. Section 7. Maggie Simpson, the one who sees everything and says nothing. There is a moment at the end of Lisa's First Word, Season 4, Episode 10, that might be the quietest and most powerful scene in the history of The Simpsons. The family has spent the whole episode trying to get Maggie to talk. They have made funny faces, they have repeated words slowly, they have done everything parents do when they are waiting for a baby to say something. Nothing works. Maggie just sucks her pacifier and stares. At the end of the episode, Homer carries Maggie upstairs and tucks her into her crib. He looks down at her and says, "The sooner kids talk, the sooner they talk back. I hope you never say a word." He kisses her, turns off the light, and walks out. And then, alone in the dark, Maggie takes the pacifier out of her mouth and says one word, "Daddy." Nobody hears it. Homer is already gone. Marge is downstairs. Bart and Lisa are fighting. The only person who knows what Maggie said is Maggie herself and the audience watching at home. That word was voiced by Elizabeth Taylor. One of the most famous actresses in the world said a single word for a cartoon baby, and that single word tells you almost everything you need to know about Maggie Simpson. She is there. She is aware. She has things to say, but nobody is listening. A psychologist looking at the Simpson family would pay very close attention to Maggie, even though, or especially because, she is the easiest member of the family to overlook. She is a baby. She does not speak in most episodes. She crawls around on the floor while everyone else argues, yells, cries, and slams doors above her. She is physically present in almost every family scene, but she is almost never the focus. Homer himself once described her as the forgotten Simpson. And from a psychological point of view, that is exactly what makes her so important. In any family, psychologists pay attention to the youngest child because the youngest child is the one who has the least power and the least ability to express what they need. They cannot leave the room when things get tense. They cannot argue back when someone is being unfair. They cannot explain what they are feeling. All they can do is watch, absorb, and react in whatever small ways they can. And Maggie has been watching this family from the floor since the day she was born. Think about what Maggie sees every day. She sees her father drinking beer on the couch. She sees her mother cleaning up messes that nobody else will touch. She sees Bart getting yelled at, strangled, and sent to his room. She sees Lisa playing sad music alone in her bedroom. She sees the tension between her parents when Homer does something thoughtless, which is most days. She sees all of it, and she cannot say a single word about any of it. Psychologists who study how babies develop emotionally focus heavily on something called the bond between a child and their main caregiver, usually the mother. The idea is simple. When a baby feels safe, protected, and consistently cared for, they develop a sense of trust in the world. They learn that when they cry, someone comes. When they are hungry, someone feeds them. When they are scared, someone holds them. That sense of safety becomes the foundation for how they handle relationships and stress for the rest of their lives. Maggie's bond with Marge is, in many ways, the strongest and most consistent relationship in the entire Simpson family. Marge is always there. Marge feeds her, changes her, carries her, and protects her. When the Simpson children were temporarily placed in a foster home with the Flanders family in Home Sweet Home Diddly Dum Doodly, Season 7, Episode 3, Maggie was the quickest to adapt. She settled into the Flanders household easily. She even started picking up Ned Flanders' way of speaking, saying daddly doodly. She was on the verge of being baptized into the Flanders family when Marge arrived at the last second. And the moment Maggie saw her real mother, she chose her. She crawled back to Marge. The bond was never really broken, but a psychologist would also notice the other side of Maggie's experience, the side involving Homer. Homer's relationship with Maggie is complicated in a way that is both funny and sad. He loves her, but he frequently forgets she exists. In Homer Alone, Season 3, Episode 15, when Marge goes on vacation and leaves Maggie in Homer's care, he is so overwhelmed that Maggie actually leaves the house by herself and goes missing. Homer has to call the Department of Missing Babies. Maggie wanders through Springfield alone, at one point mistaking a woman with a tall blue hairdo in a salon for her mother. She ends up on the roof of an ice cream shop. The baby literally ran away because the one person left in charge of her could not handle it. And this is not a one-time thing. Across the series, Homer has forgotten Maggie at stores, left her unattended, handed her dangerous objects, and failed to notice her in the room. In one famous running gag, when people ask Homer how many children he has, he often says 2 before being reminded that Maggie exists. The show plays this for laughs, but a psychologist would see something more serious underneath. A father who is so consumed by his own needs, his own problems, and his own distractions that his youngest child becomes invisible to him. And yet, despite all of this, Maggie's love for Homer is one of the most powerful threads in the entire series. Her first canon word was Daddy, spoken to an empty room. In And Maggie Makes 3, Season 6, Episode 13, the episode where Homer covers the Don't Forget You're Here Forever sign with photos of Maggie to read Do It For Her, we see that Homer gave up his dream job at the bowling alley and went back to the job he hates at the nuclear power plant because Maggie was on the way. He did it for her. And even though Homer is a terrible caretaker in the day-to-day sense, even though he forgets her and ignores her and leaves her in dangerous situations, Maggie keeps choosing him. She keeps reaching for him. She keeps loving the father who does not always deserve it. A psychologist would find this fascinating and a little heartbreaking, because what it shows is a child who has learned to love someone unreliable. Maggie's bond with Homer is not based on consistent care. It is based on moments, brief flashes of connection that happen just often enough to keep the bond alive. Homer tucks her in at night and she says, "Daddy," into the dark. Homer gives up his dream and puts her pictures on the wall. Homer holds her in his arms after some crisis, and for that moment, he is fully present. Those moments matter enormously to a baby, but they are surrounded by long stretches of absence, neglect, and chaos. And a psychologist would say that a child who grows up with that pattern, intense love mixed with inconsistent attention, often develops a complicated relationship with trust. They learn to love deeply, but they also learn that the people they love might not always be there. Now, there is another side to Maggie that a psychologist would take very seriously, and it is the side that most people treat as a joke. Maggie Simpson has a pattern of violence that runs through the entire series. She has been involved in some of the most extreme acts committed by any member of the family. In Who Shot Mr. Burns?, the two-part story that spanned the Season 6 finale and Season 7 premiere, the whole town spends the summer trying to figure out who shot the richest and most hated man in Springfield. The answer, revealed in Part 2, shocked everyone. It was Maggie. When Mr. Burns tried to steal her lollipop, his gun fell out of his holster and into Maggie's hands. The gun went off. She shot him. The show presents this mostly as an absurd twist. A baby shot a billionaire. Case closed. Chief Wiggum even says, "No jury in the world is going to convict a baby." But it was not the last time. In Papa's Got a Brand New Badge, Season 13, Episode 22, when Fat Tony and his mob come to the Simpson house to take revenge on Homer, a mystery sniper scares them off. The sniper turns out to be Maggie, sitting in her bedroom window with a rifle, protecting her father. Nobody in the family finds out she did it. Dennis M. McCarthy, a psychology professor who wrote about the Simpson family in the book The Psychology of the Simpsons, specifically flagged Maggie as a child at high risk for future problems. He pointed to what he described as violent tendencies and noted that the environment she is growing up in, a household with an alcoholic father, an overwhelmed mother, and constant family conflict, creates serious risk factors for a young child. The idea that a baby on a cartoon should be flagged for future risk might sound extreme, but McCarthy's point was not really about Maggie as a person. It was about what Maggie represents, the child in the family who absorbs everything and expresses nothing, until it comes out in ways that nobody expected. That is the pattern a psychologist would focus on. Maggie does not talk. She does not cry much. She does not throw tantrums. She does not demand attention the way Bart does, or express her pain the way Lisa does. She is quiet. She is easy. She is the one everyone assumes is fine because she is not causing any problems. But a psychologist would tell you that the quiet child is often the one who needs the most attention, because the quiet child is not fine. They are just coping in a different way. They are watching. They are absorbing. They are building an understanding of the world based on everything they see happening around them. And what Maggie sees every day is a family that loves each other but does not know how to take care of each other. There is also the question of what Maggie is missing. In a house where Homer and Marge are focused on Bart's behavior problems, Lisa's emotional needs, and their own marital tension, who is paying attention to the baby? Marge does her best, but Marge is stretched so thin that even her best is not always enough. Homer tries sometimes, but his tries are unreliable. Bart and Lisa are children themselves. They cannot be expected to raise their baby sister. Maggie is growing up in a household where everyone is busy surviving, and nobody has the bandwidth to sit down on the floor and just be with her. A psychologist would also notice something about Maggie's pacifier. She sucks on it constantly. It is in her mouth in almost every scene she appears in. The show has even addressed this directly. In Crook and Ladder, Season 18, Episode 19, when Marge tries to take Maggie's pacifier away, Maggie throws a full rampage. She cannot function without it. A psychologist would see the pacifier as a self-soothing tool, something Maggie uses to comfort herself because the world around her is unpredictable. When you are a baby and you cannot control anything that happens around you, the one thing you can control is that small piece of rubber in your mouth. It is your anchor. It is your constant. And the fact that Maggie clings to hers so desperately suggests that she needs that anchor more than a baby in a calmer, more stable home might. Maggie Simpson is the character in this family that a psychologist would worry about the most in the long run. Not because she is showing the most obvious problems right now, but because she is showing almost nothing, and that is exactly what makes her vulnerable. She is the child who will grow up having absorbed every fight, every disappointment, every moment of chaos in this house. She will have watched her father choose beer over his family 1,000 times. She will have watched her mother hold everything together until she cracked. She will have watched her brother be written off and her sister be lonely. And all of those images, all of those feelings will be stored somewhere inside a person who never learned how to talk about them. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The quiet ones are the ones who carry the most, and the things they carry do not disappear just because nobody can see them. They get passed down from parent to child, from generation to generation, in ways that a psychologist can trace like a map. Because the problems in the Simpson family did not start with Homer. They did not start with Marge. They started long before either of them was born, in a chain of broken fathers and broken sons that stretches back further than anyone in this family wants to remember. Section 8. The Broken Chain. How Simpson men have been failing their sons for over a century. In A Father's Watch, Season 28, Episode 18, there is a scene that changes how you see the entire Simpson family. Grandpa is talking to Bart at the retirement home, and he tells him something that sounds like a joke at first, but is not funny at all. He tells Bart about the Simpson men, how every generation the father crushes the spirit of his son. Grandpa tells Bart how his own father, Orville Simpson, used to strangle him. And then the show gives us a quick image, a vision of young Grandpa being strangled by Orville, and Orville being strangled by his own father, Old Tut Simpson. 3 generations of Simpson men, each one choking the life out of the next, each one treating his son the way he was treated, each one passing down the same pain without even knowing he is doing it. A psychologist would look at that image and see the clearest possible picture of what happens when hurt gets handed from father to son, from one generation to the next. The term they would use is a cycle, a pattern that repeats itself across time, where the damage done to one person gets carried forward and done again to the next person in line. Not because anyone chooses it, not because anyone wants it, but because when pain is all you know, pain is what you pass on. The Simpson family tree, as the show has built it across 35 years of episodes, is a long line of broken fathers. The pattern goes back further than anyone in the family can remember. Old Tut Simpson strangled his son. Orville strangled Grandpa. Grandpa raised Homer alone and badly. Homer strangles Bart. 4 generations, same pattern, same outcome. The details change, but the story stays the same. A father who does not know how to love his son the right way because nobody ever taught him how. Let us start with Grandpa, Abraham Simpson. What we know about his childhood from the show is scattered across many episodes, but the pieces add up to a painful picture. His parents, Orville and Yuma Simpson, immigrated to America. In Much Ado About Nothing, Season 7, Episode 23, Grandpa tells the story of his family coming to this country. His father was apparently a harsh man. In A Father's Watch, we see that Orville's method of raising his son involved physical force, strangling him, just like Homer would later strangle Bart. Grandpa grew up being hurt by his father, and he carried that hurt into his own life as a parent. Grandpa served in World War II, which the show has referenced many times. He came home from the war and married Mona Simpson, Homer's mother. But the marriage was not happy. Grandpa was rigid, old-fashioned, and emotionally cold. In Mother Simpson, Season 7, Episode 8, we see a flashback to 1969. Mona and Grandpa are watching the Super Bowl together. While Mona is drawn to the spirit of change she sees in Joe Namath's long hair and the culture of the late 1960s, Grandpa is stuck in the past. He looks at Namath and says, "Look at them sideburns. He looks like a girl." Now, Johnny Unitas, there's a haircut you could set your watch to. This is not just a joke about an old man being out of touch. It is a picture of two people who were moving in completely different directions. Mona wanted change. Grandpa wanted things to stay the same, and that gap between them eventually broke the family apart. Mona became radicalized by the hippie movement. She joined a group of protesters who destroyed Mr. Burns's germ warfare laboratory. She was identified because she went back to help an injured Mr. Burns, and she became a wanted fugitive. She had no choice but to leave. She kissed a sleeping Homer goodbye and disappeared into the night. And here is where Grandpa made the decision that would shape Homer's entire life. Instead of telling Homer the truth about why his mother left, Grandpa told him she was dead. Think about what that does to a child. Homer was a little boy. His mother was there one day and gone the next. And instead of being told that she loved him but had to leave to protect the family, he was told she died. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Homer grew up believing his mother was dead, and more than that, he grew up believing it might have been his fault. In Mother Simpson, when Marge asks Homer why he never tried to find out more about his mother, Homer says, "I don't know. I guess I was just a horrible son, and no mother would want me." He carried that belief for over 25 years. He believed deep down that he was unlovable, that something about him was so bad that his own mother chose to leave. And it gets worse. It was later revealed across multiple episodes that Mona did try to stay in contact. She sent Homer care packages every week for years. But the packages never arrived because Grandpa did not tip the mail carrier at Christmas. So all of the letters and gifts were held at the post office. Mona's love was sitting in a bag at the post office the entire time Homer was growing up, believing nobody cared about him. In one later episode, Forgive and Regret, Season 29, Episode 18, it was even revealed that Grandpa actively tried to get rid of the sweet notes and pie recipes that Mona had left behind for Homer, deliberate efforts to erase her from his life. Grandpa did not just fail to tell Homer the truth. He worked to make sure Homer would never feel his mother's love. A psychologist would look at this and see something devastating, but also very common. Grandpa was hurt. His wife left him. He was angry, bitter, and ashamed. And instead of processing that pain in a healthy way, he took it out on the person who was most vulnerable, his own child. He punished Homer for Mona's choices. He withheld love. He withheld truth. He raised Homer in an environment where affection was rare, criticism was constant, and the message was clear. You are not worth much. In Lisa's Sax, Season 9, Episode 3, there is a flashback where Grandpa gives Homer advice on his first day of school. The advice is, "Homer, you're dumb as a mule and twice as ugly. If a strange man offers you a ride, I say take it. That is what Grandpa said to his son on the most important morning of his childhood. It is played as a joke, but underneath the joke is the truth of how Grandpa parented Homer, with insults, with neglect, and with a casual cruelty that told Homer every day that he did not matter. Now look at what Homer became. He grew up without a mother. He grew up with a father who insulted him and withheld love. He grew up believing he was stupid, ugly, and unwanted. And when Homer became a father himself, what did he do? He repeated the pattern. Not exactly the same way. Homer is not as cold as Grandpa. Homer clearly loves his children in a way that Grandpa never showed him. But the damage still comes through. Homer strangles Bart when Bart makes him angry, just like Orville strangled Grandpa, and Grandpa was strangled before that. Homer calls Bart stupid. Homer forgets Maggie exists. Homer chooses beer and television over being present with his family. Homer does all of these things not because he is evil, but because he never learned any other way. This is exactly how a psychologist would explain how pain moves through families. Nobody sits down and decides, I am going to hurt my children the way my father hurt me. It happens automatically. It happens because the tools you were given as a child are the only tools you have as a parent. If you were raised with criticism, criticism is your language. If you were raised with neglect, you do not know what attention looks like. If you were raised by a father who told you that you were worthless, some part of you believes it, and that belief leaks into how you treat your own kids, even when you love them with all your heart. Homer loves Bart. This is shown clearly in dozens of episodes. In And Maggie Makes Three, Homer gave up his dream job for his children. In other episodes, Homer has risked his life for Bart, stood up for him, and shown genuine pride in him. But love alone does not break a cycle. You can love your child and still hurt them if you do not have the skills to do better. Homer loves Bart, and Homer strangles Bart. Homer loves Bart, and Homer calls him a loser in A Father's Watch, a rant so harsh that Bart overhears it and is devastated. Homer loves Bart, and Homer has no idea that his words and actions are doing to Bart exactly what Grandpa's words and actions did to him. And what about Bart? If the pattern holds, and the show has hinted many times that it does, Bart is already at risk of becoming the next link in the chain. He has trouble in school. He acts out. He has a hostile relationship with authority. He has learned from his father that problems are solved with anger, that feelings are stuffed down or drowned out, and that the people who love you are also the people who hurt you. Future episodes set years ahead have shown Bart in various states of failure, living in a rundown apartment, working dead-end jobs, struggling with the same issues his father struggled with. The show has never been subtle about this. The Simpson men are caught in a loop, and nobody in the family has figured out how to stop it. A psychologist studying this family would point out something important. The cycle does not continue because the men in this family are bad people. It continues because nobody has ever stepped in and said, this needs to stop, and here is how we stop it. Nobody has ever gotten the Simpson men into a room, Grandpa, Homer, and Bart, and helped them actually talk to each other about what happened. Grandpa has never apologized to Homer for lying about his mother. Homer has never sat down with Bart and acknowledged that the strangling, the insults, and the neglect are wrong. Nobody has done the work, and without the work, the cycle just keeps turning. There is one more layer to this that a psychologist would notice. The women in the Simpson family, Mona, Marge, Lisa, have all tried in their own ways to break the pattern. Mona left because she wanted a better world, even though leaving broke her son. Marge holds the family together every day, even though it is destroying her. Lisa sees the problems more clearly than anyone and tries to point them out, even though nobody listens. The women see what is happening, they care, they try, but they cannot fix it alone, because the cycle is between the fathers and the sons. And until the fathers and sons face each other honestly, the chain will not break. The Simpson family's pain is not random. It is inherited. It was given to Grandpa by Orville, given to Homer by Grandpa, and given to Bart by Homer. Each man received it as a child and passed it on to the next without meaning to. A psychologist would call this the most important thing about the Simpson family. More important than Homer's drinking, more important than Bart's behavior, more important than Lisa's loneliness. The root of everything is the chain. And the chain stretches back so far that nobody in the family even remembers who forged the first link. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But understanding the chain is only part of the picture, because while the Simpson men have been quietly destroying each other across generations, Homer and Marge have been doing something else entirely, holding together a marriage that, by all logic, should have fallen apart decades ago. And a psychologist would have a very specific explanation for why it has not. Section 9. Homer and Marge. The marriage that should not work, but somehow does. There is a moment in The Way We Was, Season 2, Episode 12, that tells you everything you need to know about Homer and Marge Simpson's relationship. It is 1974. Homer is a senior in high school. He has just been rejected by Marge, who went to the prom with Artie Ziff instead of him. Artie is smart, well-spoken, and accomplished. Everything Homer is not. Homer went to the prom alone. He watched Marge and Artie get crowned prom king and queen. He sat by himself at a table meant for two and ate both dinners. And when he could not take any more of it, he went out into the hallway and cried. Marge followed him out. She asked him why he was putting himself through this. And Homer, through his tears, said something that was probably the most honest thing he has ever said in 35 years of television. He told Marge that usually when he has a thought, there are a lot of other thoughts in there too. Some saying yes, some saying no. But with Marge, there was only yes. He was certain they were meant to be together. Marge told him he was wrong about that, but he was not wrong. Later that same night, after Artie tried to force himself on Marge in the back seat of his car and tore her dress, Marge drove home, heard her parents talking about how lucky she was to be with Artie, got in her car, and went looking for Homer. She found him walking on the side of the road in the dark, his limousine money gone, heading home alone. She picked him up. She told him she should have gone to the prom with him, and Homer took the corsage he had bought for her and used it to fix the torn strap of her dress. Then he said, "I'm afraid that once you stop this car, I'm going to hug you and kiss you, and then I'll never be able to let you go." And he never did. A psychologist looking at the beginning of Homer and Marge's love story would see something important right away. This is not a relationship built on two people being a perfect match. This is a relationship built on something deeper, a feeling, a gut-level sense of belonging that started before either of them had jobs or a house or children or any of the things that would later make their lives so complicated. Homer chose Marge before he had anything to offer her. Marge chose Homer over the smarter, more successful option because something about Homer felt real in a way that Artie Ziff did not. Their love started not with logic, but with a feeling that neither of them could fully explain. And that feeling has carried them through over 30 years of marriage, through things that would have ended most relationships 10 times over. Because make no mistake, if you look at what Homer has put Marge through over the course of 800 episodes, it is remarkable that she has stayed. He has embarrassed her in public more times than anyone can count. He has forgotten anniversaries. He has spent their savings on ridiculous schemes. He has gotten drunk and caused scenes. He has put his children in danger through carelessness. He has strangled their son. He has told her personal secrets to a classroom full of strangers. He has lied to her, ignored her, and taken her for granted in ways that would make any marriage counselor's head spin. And yet Marge stays. She always stays. A psychologist named Dr. Wind Goodfriend wrote a detailed study of Homer and Marge's marriage, applying what researchers call the investment model, a way of looking at why people stay in relationships. The model says that whether a couple stays together depends on three things: how satisfied they are, what other options they think they have, and how much they have already put into the relationship. Let us look at Homer and Marge through each of these three pieces, because it explains not just why they stay together, but what their marriage really is underneath all the comedy. The first piece is satisfaction. Are Homer and Marge happy? The answer is complicated. On one hand, they fight. They struggle with money. Homer causes constant stress. Marge feels unappreciated. These are real problems. But Dr. Goodfriend pointed out something important. Satisfaction is not just about whether your relationship is perfect. It is also about how your relationship compares to the other relationships around you. And when Homer and Marge look around Springfield, what do they see? They see Reverend and Mrs. Lovejoy, who clearly do not like each other. They see Kirk and Luann Van Houten, who got divorced in A Millhouse Divided, Season 8, Episode 6, in one of the most uncomfortable dinner scenes in the show's history. They see Moe, who is alone and miserable. They see the Flanders family, where Ned's first wife Maud died, and his second marriage was complicated. Compared to almost every other couple in Springfield, Homer and Marge are actually doing well. Their relationship has problems, but it also has something that most couples around them do not: genuine love. Homer really does love Marge, and Marge really does love Homer. That counts for more than people sometimes realize. The second piece is what psychologists call alternatives. Basically, what other options do you think you have? If Homer left Marge, what would his life look like? The show has answered this question directly, and the answer is total disaster. In Secrets of a Successful Marriage, Season 5, Episode 22, Marge kicks Homer out of the house after he reveals her personal secrets to his adult education class. Homer moves into Bart's treehouse. In one single day, he becomes filthy, starving, and mentally unstable. He starts talking to a plant he has dressed up to look like Marge. He completely falls apart. When he finally tries to win Marge back, the only thing he can think to offer her is, in his words, complete and utter dependence. He tells Marge that he needs her, that he cannot function without her, that he is already going insane after just a day apart. It is played for laughs, but the truth underneath it is real. Homer literally cannot survive on his own. And what about Marge? If Marge left Homer, what are her options? The show has explored this too. Moe has been interested in Marge for years, moving in on her whenever Homer is out of the picture, which is exactly what he did in Secrets of a Successful Marriage when Homer was kicked out. But Moe is hardly a step up from Homer. He is dishonest, desperate, and lives above a bar. In other episodes, Marge has met men who seemed like better options, more successful, more attentive, more put together than Homer. But she always comes back, partly because of her values, partly because of the children, but mostly because no matter how frustrating Homer is, he is hers. He has been hers since that night on the side of the road in 1974. And walking away from that would mean walking away from the person she has built her entire life around. The third piece, and Dr. Goodfriend said this is the most powerful one, is investment. Investments are the things you have put into a relationship that you cannot get back. Time, energy, sacrifices, shared memories, a home, children. Think about what Homer and Marge have invested in each other. They have been together since high school. They got married young after Marge became pregnant with Bart. In I Married Marge, Season 3, Episode 12, Homer tells the kids the story of how he and Marge got married. They were barely adults. They had no money. They conceived Bart at a mini golf course, got married at a cheap roadside wedding chapel, and could not even afford baby supplies. Their things got repossessed. Marge's wedding ring was taken. Homer, feeling like a failure, left Marge a note in the middle of the night saying he was going to find work and send every cent back to her. Marge was devastated when she read the letter the next morning. But then something happened that tells you exactly who Homer Simpson is at his core. He got a job, a terrible job, working at a fast food restaurant, but he showed up and worked. And when Selma told Marge where Homer was, Marge went to find him. Homer was ashamed. He had nothing to offer. He gave Marge an onion ring to replace the wedding ring that had been taken, saying, "Marge, pour vous," the same words he had used when he first tried to impress her in high school French tutoring. And Marge took it. Because it was not about the ring. It was about the fact that Homer was still trying. He had not given up on her, even when he had given up on himself. Homer then marched into the Springfield nuclear power plant, barged into Mr. Burns's office, and told Burns to give him a job because he would be the most loyal, hard-working, obedient employee Burns had ever seen. Burns hired him on the spot. Homer went straight to the hospital where Marge was about to give birth to Bart. He stood up to Patty and Selma for the first time, telling them to show him some respect. And then he held his son. That is what investment looks like. Decades of shared struggle, shared sacrifice, shared life. 3 children. A house on Evergreen Terrace. 1,000 fights followed by 1,000 makeups. Every Christmas, every birthday, every crisis, every quiet night on the couch watching television together. You cannot divide that up. You cannot walk away from it without losing everything, and both Homer and Marge know that. This is why, when a psychologist looks at the Simpson marriage, they do not just see a flawed man and a patient woman. They see 2 people who are bound together by something much stronger than happiness. They are bound by history, by need, by the fact that neither of them can imagine a life without the other, even on the days when they can barely stand each other. But here is the part that a psychologist would also be honest about. Just because a marriage lasts does not mean it is healthy. Homer and Marge's marriage survives, yes. It survives because of love, because of investment, because of a lack of better alternatives, and because Marge is willing to absorb an extraordinary amount of pain to keep the family together. But surviving is not the same as thriving. A marriage where one person does all the emotional work, where one person swallows all the hurt, where one person holds everything together while the other person causes most of the problems, that is a marriage under constant stress. It can last forever and still leave both people damaged. Marge stays because she loves Homer. She also stays because leaving would mean admitting that the life she built was not enough, and that is a thought she cannot face. Homer stays because he literally cannot function alone, and because, underneath all his selfishness and stupidity, he knows that Marge is the best thing that ever happened to him. These are not bad reasons to stay married, but they are also not the same as 2 people choosing each other every day from a place of strength and joy. Doctor. Good Friends study concluded that Homer and Marge are satisfied, dependent, and deeply invested, the 3 things the model says predict whether a couple stays together. By every measure, this marriage will last. But lasting is not the only thing that matters. The quality of a marriage matters too. And the quality of Homer and Marge's marriage depends almost entirely on Marge's willingness to keep giving more than she gets. The truth about the Simpson marriage is that it works because Marge makes it work. She is the foundation. She is the glue. And she pays for it every day with her energy, her happiness, her dreams, and her sense of self. Homer gets to be Homer because Marge absorbs the cost. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That arrangement, one person carrying everything so the other person does not have to, does not just affect a marriage, it affects the children who grow up watching it. And the children in the Simpson family have been watching their parents very closely, learning lessons about love and relationships that will shape them for the rest of their lives. But those children are not just shaped by what happens inside the house. They are also shaped by what happens outside it, by the town they live in, the school they attend, and the people they are surrounded by every single day. And Springfield, as it turns out, is not just a backdrop. It is part of the problem. Section 10. Springfield, the town that was never going to let them be okay. Up to this point, we have talked about the Simpson family as though their problems begin and end inside the walls of 742 Evergreen Terrace. Homer's drinking, Marge's exhaustion, Bart's behavior, Lisa's loneliness, Maggie's silence, the chain of broken fathers, the marriage that holds together through love and need and not much else. All of these are real problems, but a psychologist looking at this family would tell you something that most people miss. These problems do not exist in a bubble. The Simpson family lives in Springfield, and Springfield is not just a setting. It is part of the disease. When psychologists study families, they do not just look at what happens inside the home. They look at the environment around the home, the schools, the workplaces, the community, the systems that are supposed to support people when things get hard. And when those systems are broken, when the school does not teach, when the workplace does not care, when the government does not govern, and when the community does not protect its own, then the family is fighting a battle it was never designed to fight alone. The Simpson family has been fighting that battle for over 35 years, and they have been losing it slowly the entire time. Not because they are bad people, but because the town around them has never given them a real chance. Let us start where it matters most for the children, Springfield Elementary School. This is the place where Bart and Lisa spend most of their waking hours. This is the institution that is supposed to educate them, support them, and help them grow into healthy adults. And it is, by almost every measure the show has ever given us, a complete disaster. In The PTA Disbands, Season 6, Episode 21, the show lays out exactly how bad things are. The school bus is literally falling apart. There are holes in the floor so big that students have to move seats to avoid falling through. The brakes barely work. Principal Skinner has cut the budget so deeply that the school cannot afford basic supplies. The only textbooks they have are ones that were banned by other schools. The cafeteria serves food that is barely edible. At one point, lunch lady Doris says there is very little meat in the gym mats she is using to make lunch. When Mrs. Krabappel confronts Skinner about the conditions, demanding that the school invest in the students' futures, Skinner snaps and says something that shocks everyone in the cafeteria. "Oh, come on, Edna. We both know these children have no future." He catches himself immediately and tells the horrified kids, "Prove me wrong, kids. Prove me wrong." But the damage is done. The principal of their school just said, out loud, in front of all of them, that their futures are already over. The teachers go on strike, and what happens next tells you everything about how little Springfield values its children. The school does not close and figure out a solution. Instead, the PTA brings in random people from the neighborhood to teach. Jasper, a senile old man from the retirement home, becomes Lisa's teacher and paddles students for everything, including paddling the school canoe. Marge becomes Bart's substitute, which makes him a target for bullies. The whole system falls apart, not because of one bad decision, but because the system was barely holding together in the first place. Government budget cuts had squeezed the school dry. Skinner was not evil. He was a man trying to run a school with no money, making impossible choices about what to cut and what to keep. But the result was the same. The children of Springfield were being failed by the very place that was supposed to help them. And this is not just one episode. Springfield Elementary's failures are a running theme across the entire series. In Lisa's Sax, Season 9, Episode 3, the school psychologist looks at 5-year-old Bart's test results and tells Homer and Marge, "He's 5. His life is over." A school official said that about a child who had not even started first grade. In Bart Gets an F, Season 2, Episode 1, Bart studies harder than he has ever studied in his life and still fails his test by 1 point. The system was not built to help kids like Bart. It was built to sort them, to label the smart ones as gifted and the struggling ones as lost causes, and to move on. Lisa does not fare much better, even though she is brilliant. She is placed in the same underfunded school with the same overworked teachers in a town that does not value intelligence or creativity. Her music teacher, Mr. Largo, shuts down her emotional playing because it does not follow the sheet music. Her classmates do not understand her. She is a genius in a school that can barely keep the lights on. In The PTA Disbands, when the teachers go on strike, Lisa falls apart. She has no idea who she is without school, without tests, without someone grading her work. She begs Marge to give her a test, any test, just so she can feel normal again. That is what Springfield Elementary has done to Lisa. It has made her so dependent on being graded that she cannot function without it. Now look at where Homer spends his days, the Springfield Nuclear Power Plant, owned by Charles Montgomery Burns. This is not just a bad workplace. It is one of the most dangerous, poorly run, and morally bankrupt institutions ever put on television. Mr. Burns is a billionaire who cares nothing about his workers. The plant has had countless safety violations, near meltdowns, and environmental disasters. Homer was hired not because he was qualified, but because he walked into Burns's office and promised to be completely obedient. In I Married Marge, Season 3, Episode 12, Homer told Burns he would be unwaveringly loyal, and Burns, seeing the value in a man who would never question anything, hired him on the spot. Homer works at that plant every day in a job he hates for a boss who does not know his name despite decades of employment. In Who Shot Mr. Burns? Season 6, Episode 25, Burns still cannot remember who Homer is, repeatedly calling him by the wrong name, even after years of working together. Homer has no career growth, no meaningful purpose at work, and no sense of accomplishment from what he does. He sits in front of a console pressing buttons he does not understand, in a building that could explode at any moment, working for a man who would literally block out the sun if it made him richer, which is exactly what Burns tried to do in that same episode. The plant does not just fail to support Homer, it actively drains him. It takes his time, his energy, and his dignity, and gives him back just enough money to keep showing up. And then there is the town itself. Springfield's government is run by Mayor Quimby, a man who the show has repeatedly portrayed as corrupt, self-serving, and incompetent. The police department is led by Chief Wiggum, who is shown in nearly every episode he appears in to be unfit for the job. The town has no functioning safety net. When Marge had her breakdown in Homer Alone, Season 3, Episode 15, and stopped her car on the Springfield Memorial Bridge, the town's response was not to ask what was wrong or to offer help. The response was to send news helicopters and treat it as entertainment. When she was finally talked off the bridge, she was arrested. A woman having a mental health crisis was treated as a criminal, not a patient. Springfield's church, led by Reverend Lovejoy, is supposed to be a source of moral guidance and community support, but Lovejoy has been shown to be burned out, disinterested, and often unhelpful. In Secrets of a Successful Marriage, Season 5, Episode 22, when Homer was kicked out of the house and needed someone to help him fix his marriage, Marge invited the Lovejoys over. Instead of counseling them toward healing, Reverend Lovejoy told Marge to get a divorce. A man of the church, whose job is to protect the bond of marriage, told a struggling wife to give up. That is the kind of support Springfield offers. Even the community itself fails the Simpsons. Moe, Homer's closest friend outside the family, is a bartender who profits from Homer's drinking problem and repeatedly tries to pursue Marge whenever the marriage is in trouble. Ned Flanders, the other neighbor, is a genuinely good person, but his version of help is religious advice that rarely addresses the real problems. Patty and Selma, Marge's own sisters, have spent decades telling her that marrying Homer was a mistake, undermining her confidence and her marriage at every opportunity. A psychologist would look at all of this and see what is called a failing support system. Families do not exist alone. They exist inside communities, and those communities are supposed to provide the things families cannot provide for themselves: good schools, safe workplaces, honest government, reliable institutions, and a network of people who genuinely look out for each other. Springfield has none of these things. The school is underfunded and understaffed. The power plant is dangerous and dehumanizing. The government is corrupt. The police are incompetent. The church is checked out. The neighbors are either hostile or helpless. The whole town is broken, and the Simpson family lives right in the middle of it, absorbing the damage every single day. This is why when psychologists study families, they always look at the bigger picture. It is easy to blame Homer for drinking. It is easy to blame Marge for enabling. It is easy to blame Bart for acting out, or Lisa for being too intense. But when you zoom out and see the world these people live in, a world where the school calls your kid a lost cause at age 5, where your husband's boss does not know his name after 20 years, where your town's leader is a crook, where the only gathering place for men is a bar, and where the one time you ask for help from the church, they tell you to give up, then you start to understand that the family's problems are not just personal. They are built into the world around them. Springfield is not helping the Simpsons. It never has. It is a town designed, almost perfectly, to keep struggling people struggling. Good schools cost money that the town will not spend. Safe workplaces require regulations that the town will not enforce. Mental health support requires systems that the town has never built. And so the Simpsons do what millions of real families do. They cope with what they have, they hold on to each other as tightly as they can, and they try to make it through one more day in a world that was not built to help them succeed. The Simpson family's problems are real. Homer's drinking is real. Marge's exhaustion is real. Bart's pain is real. Lisa's isolation is real. Maggie's silence is real. But those problems did not come from nowhere. They were grown in the soil of a town that does not take care of its people. Pull any one of these family members out of Springfield, put them in a town with good schools, a supportive community, and real opportunities, and their story might look completely different. But Springfield is all they have, and that is part of the tragedy. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Still, for all the ways the town fails them, there is one thing the Simpson family has that most families, real or fictional, never manage to hold on to. Through all the drinking and the fighting and the dysfunction, through all the broken systems and failed institutions, the Simpsons keep coming back to each other. Every single time. And a psychologist would say that this stubborn, irrational, sometimes baffling refusal to let go of each other might be the most important thing about them. It might even be the thing that saves them. Section 11. What holds them together? The love that keeps showing up anyway. We have spent a long time talking about what is wrong with the Simpson family. Homer's drinking, Marge's exhaustion, Bart's pain, Lisa's loneliness, Maggie's silence. The chain of fathers who keep hurting their sons. The marriage held together by need as much as by love. The town that fails them at every turn. If you stopped the video essay right here, you would walk away thinking The Simpsons are nothing but a case study in how families fall apart. But that is not the whole story. And a psychologist, a good one, an honest one, would tell you that the most interesting thing about the Simpson family is not what breaks them. It is what holds them together. Because this family, despite everything, keeps showing up for each other. Not perfectly, not gracefully, not in the ways that therapists would recommend, but they show up. Again and again and again, through 800 episodes in 35 years, The Simpsons keep choosing each other. And that is not nothing. That might be everything. Let us start with the moment that says more about Homer Simpson than any other scene in the history of the show. In And Maggie Makes 3, Season 6, Episode 13, the kids are looking through the family photo album and notice there are no pictures of Maggie anywhere. Homer tells them the story. He explains that before Maggie was born, he had finally paid off all his debts. For the first time in his life, he was free. He quit his job at the nuclear power plant, dramatically, joyfully, burning a bridge on his way out, and got his dream job working at a bowling alley. He was happy, truly, completely happy. He had everything he wanted. And then Marge found out she was pregnant with Maggie. Homer could not support a third child on a bowling alley salary. He knew it. Marge knew it. So Homer did the hardest thing he had ever done. He walked away from the job that made him happy and went back to the place that made him miserable. He went back to the power plant. He walked through the rain, past the acid puddles, past the guard in a gas mask, and asked for his old job back. Mr. Burns made him beg. Burns made him crawl. And then, after rehiring him, Burns placed a sign above Homer's workstation that read, "Don't forget, you're here forever." That sign was meant to break Homer. It was meant to remind him every single day that his dreams were over and his life was a trap. And for most people, it would have worked. But here is what Homer did. He took every baby picture of Maggie he had and taped them around the sign, covering just the right letter so that the message changed. The sign no longer read, "Don't forget, you're here forever." It now read, "Do it for her." When Bart and Lisa ask Homer where all of Maggie's baby pictures are, he tells them they are where he needs them most. The camera cuts to his workstation and we see the photos and the altered sign. That is where the episode ends. No big speech, no dramatic music, just a man sitting at a job he hates, surrounded by pictures of his daughter, with a message he made for himself out of something that was meant to destroy him. A psychologist would look at that moment and see the single most important thing about Homer Simpson. He is a deeply flawed man. He drinks too much. He is selfish. He makes terrible decisions. And he has hurt the people he loves more times than anyone can count. But when it matters, when his family truly needs him, Homer shows up. He does not show up the way people want him to. He does not show up the way a therapist would recommend, but he shows up. He went back to the job he hated because his daughter needed a father who could feed her. He gave up his dream because his family was more important than his happiness. And he turned a sign meant to crush his spirit into a reason to keep going. That is love. It is messy, imperfect, clumsy love, but it is real. And Homer is not the only one. Every member of the Simpson family has moments like this. Moments where the dysfunction falls away and what is left is something raw and honest and true. Take Lisa. In Lisa's Substitute, Season 2, Episode 19, Lisa meets Mr. Bergstrom, a substitute teacher played by Dustin Hoffman. He is everything Lisa has been searching for: smart, kind, interested in ideas, willing to listen to her. He is the teacher she always deserved, in a school that has never given her one. For a few days, Lisa feels seen. She feels understood. She feels like she matters. And then Mr. Bergstrom's time as a substitute ends, and he has to leave. Lisa runs to the train station to stop him. She is crying. She tells him she will be lost without him. Mr. Bergstrom tells her that he is a substitute. He goes where he is needed. But before he boards the train, he writes her a note and tells her that anytime she feels alone, the contents of this note are all she will ever need to know. Lisa opens the note. It says, "You are Lisa Simpson." That is it. 4 words. But those 4 words contain a truth that Lisa has been struggling with her entire life. The idea that who she is, exactly as she is enough. She does not need to be the smartest. She does not need to fix everyone. She does not need a teacher or a town or a family that fully understands her. She just needs to be Lisa Simpson. And that will always be enough. Later that same night, Lisa comes home devastated. Homer, who has been dealing with his own problems all episode, sees his daughter crying and does something unexpected. He listens. He holds her. He walks her to her room and tucks her in and tells her she is the most wonderful person he has ever met. And for that one moment, Homer is the father Lisa needs. Not a perfect father, not a brilliant father, but a father who sees his daughter hurting and drops everything to be there for her. And Lisa, still holding Mr. Bergstrom's note, feels a little better, because even in a house full of chaos, somebody noticed. Then there is Bart. For all the trouble he causes, for all the detentions and the pranks and the failures, Bart has a heart that is bigger than anyone in the family gives him credit for. In Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass Song, Season 5, Episode 19, Bart's antics get Principal Skinner fired. At first, Bart is thrilled. His greatest enemy is gone. But then, something strange happens. Bart starts to miss Skinner. He visits him. They become friends. And when Ned Flanders takes over as principal and the school falls apart under his weak leadership, Bart is the one who works to get Skinner his job back. He does this knowing that once Skinner is principal again, their friendship will end and they will go back to being enemies. Bart does it anyway. Because Bart, underneath all the acting out, understands something important. Skinner belongs at the school and the school needs him. When Skinner is rehired, Bart puts a prank sign on Skinner's back. Skinner, without missing a beat, puts a sign on Bart's back that reads, "Teach me." They are enemies again, but they are enemies who respect each other. And that small, quiet moment tells you that Bart Simpson is capable of doing the right thing, even when it costs him something. And then there is Marge. We have talked at length about what Marge gives up for this family, her energy, her dreams, her sense of self. But there is another side to Marge's sacrifice that a psychologist would want to highlight. Marge does not just hold the family together out of duty or habit. She does it because she genuinely believes in these people. She believes Homer can be better. She believes Bart is not a lost cause. She believes Lisa will find her place in the world. She believes Maggie will be okay. Marge is not just the glue. She is the hope. In Homer Alone, Season 3, Episode 15, after Marge has her breakdown on the bridge and goes to Rancho Relaxo to recover, the family falls apart without her. Homer cannot handle Maggie. Bart and Lisa are miserable at Patty and Selma's house. The whole household collapses, and when Marge comes home, the family promises to do better. They do not keep that promise. The show makes that very clear. But Marge comes home anyway. She comes home because she loves these people more than she loves her own peace. And that kind of love, the kind that chooses to come back even when the promise of change is probably empty, is not weakness. It is a choice. It is the choice to keep believing in people who have given you every reason to stop. Even Maggie, the baby who cannot speak, shows her love in the only ways she can. In Home Sweet Home Diddly Dum Doodly, Season 7, Episode 3, when the Simpson children are placed with the Flanders family, Maggie adapts the fastest. She starts calling Ned Daddly Doodly. She seems content. But the moment Marge appears, Maggie chooses her. Without a word, without a second of hesitation, Maggie crawls to her mother. The Flanders home was calm, stable, and safe. everything the Simpson home is not. But Maggie chose her family anyway. Because love is not about what is safe. It is about what is yours. A psychologist looking at all of these moments would see something powerful. The Simpson family is dysfunctional. That word gets used a lot, and it is accurate. But dysfunction does not mean the absence of love. It means love that is struggling. It means love that does not always know how to express itself. It means love that shows up in imperfect ways, in onion rings instead of diamond rings, in notes that say, "You are Lisa Simpson," in photographs taped over a sign that was meant to crush your spirit, in a baby who cannot say a word but crawls to her. Mother. Every single time. The Simpsons love each other. That has never been in question. Homer loves Marge enough to go back to a job he hates. Marge loves her family enough to come home when she could have stayed away. Bart loves his sister enough to defend her when it counts. Lisa loves her father enough to see the good in him even when the bad is obvious. Maggie loves all of them, silently, from the floor. The problem with the Simpson family has never been a lack of love. The problem is that love alone is not enough to fix everything. You can love someone and still hurt them. You can love your children and still fail them. You can love your spouse and still take them for granted. Love is the foundation, but it is not the whole house. The whole house requires skills, communication, patience, self-awareness, the ability to break old patterns and build new ones. And those are the things the Simpsons have never quite figured out. But what they have, this stubborn, messy, irrational love that keeps pulling them back to each other no matter how bad things get, is not nothing. It is, in fact, the one thing that has kept this family from falling apart completely. Every system around them has failed. The school has failed. The town has failed. The workplace has failed. The church has failed. But the family, somehow, has not. It bends, it cracks, it groans under the weight of everything that has been piled on top of it. But it does not break. And after 35 years, that might be the most remarkable thing about The Simpsons. Not that they are broken, but that they are still here, still together, still trying. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And now, after everything we have looked at, the drinking, the enabling, the scapegoating, the loneliness, the silence, the generational chain, the failing marriage, the broken town, and the love that holds it all together, there is only one thing left to say. A psychologist has been watching this family for a very long time. And if they could sit the Simpsons down on a couch, not the cartoon couch from the opening credits, but a real one in a real office, what would they actually tell them? What would they say to Homer, to Marge, to Bart, to Lisa, to Maggie? What would they recommend? That is where we end. Section 12. What a psychologist would actually tell the Simpsons. If a psychologist could sit the Simpson family down, all of them, together, in one room, and speak honestly about what they have seen across 35 years, 800 episodes, and a lifetime of patterns repeating themselves, this is what they would say. They would not start by listing everything that is wrong. A good psychologist never starts that way. They would start by telling the Simpsons something that this family has never heard from anyone. Not from a teacher, not from a boss, not from a neighbor, not from a preacher. They would tell them, "You are not a bad family. You are a hurt family." There is a difference. A bad family does not care. A hurt family cares so much that the caring itself becomes part of the pain. The Simpsons have never stopped caring about each other. That is not the problem. The problem is that caring, all by itself, has never been enough to fix what is broken. And what is broken did not start with any of you. The first thing a psychologist would address is the thing nobody in the family wants to talk about: Homer's drinking. Not as a joke, not as a personality quirk, not as something that just happens at Moe's after work. They would look at Homer and say, "You use alcohol to avoid your feelings. You drink when you are stressed. You drink when you are sad. You drink when you are bored. You drink when you are happy. You have been arrested for it. You have put your children in danger because of it. You have chosen the bar over your wife on nights when she needed you home. And the reason you keep drinking is not because you love beer. It is because you never learned another way to deal with what you are carrying inside." What is Homer carrying? The psychologist would already know. A mother who disappeared when he was a child. A father who told him she was dead instead of telling him the truth. A childhood spent being told he was stupid, ugly, and unwanted. A lifetime of believing somewhere deep down that he is not good enough. Not good enough for Marge. Not good enough for his kids. Not good enough for the life he somehow ended up in. Homer drinks because the feelings underneath are too big and too old and too painful to face without something to numb them. The drinking is not the disease. The drinking is what Homer uses to avoid the disease. And until he stops running from what is underneath, the bottle will always be waiting for him at Moe's. The psychologist would tell Homer that he needs to stop drinking. Not cut back, not try harder, stop. And they would tell him that stopping is not something he can do alone, because this is not just about willpower. In Duffless, Season 4, Episode 16, Homer proved he could go 30 days without a drink. He lost weight, saved money, felt better in every way. But by the next episode, he was back at Moe's. That is not because Homer is weak. It is because he went back into the same environment with the same stress, the same feelings, and the same lack of tools to deal with them. He needs real, ongoing help, not a 30-day challenge, but a real commitment to understanding why he drinks and learning what to do instead. Then the psychologist would turn to Marge, and what they would say to her might be the hardest thing anyone in the room hears. They would tell Marge that she is not helping by holding everything together. She is helping the family avoid the consequences of its own problems. Every time Marge cleans up Homer's mess, every time she smooths over a crisis, every time she absorbs the stress so nobody else has to feel it, she is sending a message to the entire family. Nothing needs to change because Marge will handle it. The psychologist would point to Homer Alone, Season 3, Episode 15, and remind Marge of what happened. She had a breakdown. She stopped her car on a bridge and could not move. The whole town watched. She was arrested. She went to a spa to recover, and then she came home, and the family promised to be better. And nothing changed. The psychologist would ask Marge, "How many times has that cycle repeated? How many times have you reached your breaking point, and the family promised to change, and then everything went back to the way it was?" And Marge would know the answer, even if she did not want to say it out loud. Every time. Every single time. The psychologist would tell Marge that she needs to stop being the shock absorber for this family. Not because she does not love them, but because her absorbing the pain is what allows the pain to continue. If Homer never feels the full weight of his drinking, he will never stop. If Bart never faces real consequences with real support behind them, he will never learn. If the family never has to sit in the discomfort of their own dysfunction, they will never be motivated to fix it. Marge holding everything together is an act of love, but it is also the thing that keeps the family from hitting the bottom that might actually force them to change. And the psychologist would tell Marge something else, something personal, something just for her. They would remind her of Fear of Flying, Season 6, Episode 11, when she finally went to see Dr. Zweig. Marge was making real progress. She was uncovering real memories and real trauma. And just when Dr. Zweig was about to start discussing Marge's relationship with Homer, the part that might have mattered most, Marge stopped going. She told herself she was cured. She told herself she did not need any more help. But the truth is, Marge stopped therapy because she was afraid of what she would find if she kept going. The psychologist would tell her, "You deserve to go back. Not for the family, for yourself. You have spent your entire life taking care of other people. It is time to find out who Marge Simpson is when she is not holding everyone else up." Then the psychologist would look at Bart, and they would not see a bad kid. They would see a 10-year-old boy who has been screaming for help since the first day of kindergarten, and nobody, not his parents, not his school, not his town, has ever given him the right kind of help. In Lisa's Sax, Season 9, Episode 3, 5-year-old Bart walked into school excited, happy, ready to learn, and his teacher mocked him. And the school psychologist told his parents his life was already over, and Homer accepted it. Bart was given up on before he had a chance, and he has been living down to those expectations ever since. The psychologist would tell Homer and Marge, directly and firmly, Bart needs to be evaluated by someone who actually cares about helping him, not labeling him. He shows signs of attention problems and difficulty with focus, which Brother's Little Helper, Season 11, Episode 2, addressed. But the solution was medication that made him paranoid, followed by different medication with no real support around it. Bart does not just need a pill, he needs someone who will sit with him, understand how his brain works, and teach him strategies that actually help. He needs a parent, specifically Homer, to stop strangling him, stop calling him stupid, and start showing up for him the way Homer showed up for Maggie when he taped those photos to the wall. Bart needs his own do-it-for-her moment. He has been waiting for it his entire life. The psychologist would also tell Homer something specific about Bart. You are repeating the cycle. Your father called you stupid. You call Bart stupid. Your father strangled you. You strangle Bart. In A Father's Watch, Season 28, Episode 18, you stood in a room and called your own son a pathetic loser, while he listened from the next room and cried. You did not mean to say it. You did not know he could hear it. But the words landed, and they did damage, just like your father's words did damage to you. The chain that started with Old Tut strangling Orville, that moved to Orville strangling Grandpa, that moved to Grandpa crushing you. That chain now runs through your hands and around Bart's neck. You are the one who has to break it. Nobody else can. Then the psychologist would turn to Lisa, and they would speak gently because Lisa already knows most of what they are going to say. She has probably figured it out years ago. The psychologist would tell Lisa, you are carrying too much. You are 8 years old, and you are carrying the weight of your own intelligence, the weight of a family that does not understand you, the weight of a school that does not challenge you, and the weight of a world full of problems that no child should have to think about. You are not responsible for fixing this family. You are not responsible for being the smart one, the moral one, the one who sees everything clearly. You are allowed to just be a kid. The psychologist would also tell Lisa that her need for approval, her need to be graded, tested, measured, and told she is doing well, is not strength. It is a sign that she has tied her entire sense of who she is to what she achieves. In the PTA Disbands, Season 6, Episode 21, when the teachers went on strike, Lisa fell apart because there was nobody to give her a test. She begged Marge to grade her. A child who cannot exist without being evaluated is a child who does not yet know that she has value beyond what she produces. The psychologist would remind Lisa of the note Mr. Bergstrom left her in Lisa's Substitute, Season 2, Episode 19. You are Lisa Simpson. Not you are the smartest kid in the room, not you got an A, just you are Lisa Simpson. That is enough. It was always enough. For Maggie, the psychologist would not have much to say directly. She is still a baby. But they would have a great deal to say to Homer and Marge about Maggie. They would say, This child is watching everything. She cannot speak yet, but she is absorbing every fight, every slammed door, every night Homer comes home from Moe's, every morning Marge cries in the kitchen before the kids wake up. Maggie's silence does not mean she is unaffected. It means she is storing everything inside, and one day all of it will come out. The earlier you fix the environment she is growing up in, the better chance she has of growing up without carrying the same wounds the rest of you carry. Finally, the psychologist would step back and look at the family as a whole, and they would say this: the Simpson family does not need to be fixed. It needs to be understood. Every problem in this family makes sense when you trace it back to where it started. Homer drinks because he was abandoned and never dealt with the pain. Marge enables because she learned that her value comes from taking care of others. Bart acts out because nobody ever gave him the right kind of attention. Lisa overachieves because she is afraid that without her achievements, she is invisible. Maggie stays silent because the world around her is too loud and too unpredictable for a baby to make sense of. None of these are character flaws, they are survival strategies. Every single member of this family developed a way to cope with a world that was not giving them what they needed. And those coping strategies worked, for a while. But they have also become the very things that are hurting the family now. Homer's drinking helped him avoid pain, but it created new pain for everyone around him. Marge's caretaking kept the family together, but it kept them from growing. Bart's rebellion got him attention, but it was the wrong kind. Lisa's intelligence saved her, but it also isolated her. Maggie's silence protected her, but it also left her alone. The psychologist would tell the Simpsons that the way forward is not to become a different family. It is to become the family they already are, but with awareness, with honesty, and with help. Homer needs to face his past and put down the bottle. Marge needs to face herself and put down the burden. Bart needs someone to believe in him the way Homer believed in Maggie when he put those pictures on the wall. Lisa needs permission to stop performing and start just being. And Maggie needs all of them to do the work now, while she is still young enough to benefit from it. The Simpsons are not a perfect family. They were never going to be. But they are a family that loves each other. And love, real love, the kind that shows up even when it does not know how, is the one thing you cannot teach. Everything else you can learn. You can learn to communicate. You can learn to listen. You can learn to break old patterns and build new ones. You can learn to ask for help. And you can learn to accept it. The Simpson family has the hardest part already. They have the love. What they need now is the courage to do something with it. And if they ever find that courage, if Homer puts down the beer, and Marge puts down the broom, and Bart puts down the slingshot, and Lisa puts down the textbook, and Maggie takes the pacifier out of her mouth, they might just discover that the family they have been trying to hold together all these years is stronger than they ever knew. They just have to be brave enough to find out. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.